The war with the Epiphyllum Cult is no longer a distant threat. As powerful enemies emerge across the Nine Dynasties, Guan discovers that forces far beyond the profound Heart Realm are beginning to move. But instead of rushing into battle, he chooses a different path, to become stronger. Deep within demon territory, Guan attempts a breakthrough into the Nirvana realm, stepping across the first true threshold of the immortal Tao. At the same time, a mysterious young demon enters his life. Taoist Xianxia encounters a terrifying fate, and the Epiphyllum Cult launches an attack directly against Taishuan sect. The world is descending into chaos, and Guan is quietly becoming something no one can afford to provoke. Welcome to episode 14. As that mysterious voice echoed across heaven and earth, the enormous gate of azure light rumbled open. A gigantic hand reached out from within, crossed the distance in an instant, and seized the fleeing void-crossing realm cultivator in its grasp. The grand cultivator nearly lost his soul from fright. He struggled with everything he had, but there was no escape. He even tried to send his primordial spirit out of his body, only to discover in despair that it could not leave his flesh at all. "You? Who are you?" the void-crossing realm cultivator cried, terror filling his voice. The mysterious giant hand suddenly clenched. His body burst into a cloud of blood, while both his primordial spirit and golden core were crushed into nothingness. The remaining soul formation realm cultivators fled in panic, but the giant hand made no move to pursue them. It simply withdrew into the gate of azure light. Beneath the night sky, the raging wind continued to howl. The blue runes surrounding Taoist Xianxia began to fade, and the great gate of light above him dissolved along with them. Taoist Xianxia spat out a mouthful of blood. His entire body rapidly weakened, but he forced himself to continue circulating his cultivation and stabilize his breathing. Far away inside Xianxian cave abode, Guan slowly rubbed the rim of his teacup, curiosity showing on his face. That mysterious hand had definitely belonged to someone in the profound heart realm, and not merely at the early stages. Its owner was at least above the 5th level. No wonder Taoist Xianxia had dared to attend the Golden Ranking Tournament alone. So he possessed a method for calling in outside assistance. Guan was extremely interested in that divine ability. It was imposing, practical, and perfect for protecting younger disciples. Even Guan, Sword Venerable Fu Dao himself, found it tempting. At the same time, his curiosity toward Sanqing Mountain deepened. Sanqing Mountain actually concealed a profound heart realm powerhouse above the 5th level. Even though that person had not reached the Great Ascension Realm, it was still enough to surprise Guan. The lands of the Nine Dynasties truly were filled with hidden dragons and crouching tigers. No wonder the Epiphyllum Cult had previously dared to cause trouble only within the Taikang dynasty instead of sweeping directly across all 9 dynasties. Guan had heard Yilan mention that Sanqing Mountain had barely more than 1,000 disciples. For such a small sect to stand at the very top of the Shentang dynasty, the proportion of grand cultivators among its members had to be astonishingly high. The Shentang dynasty itself was no simple place either. Its name came from the ancient Tiantang dynasty, which had once nearly unified all 9 dynasties. Later, however, its emperor committed acts that drew the resentment of the entire realm. Heaven was said to have answered with endless rain, flooding the dynasty and overturning its internal power structure. The Shentang dynasty now possessed more lakes than any other realm. Most cities and sects stood upon islands. Although the ancient flood had drowned vast stretches of land, it had also caused the dynasty's spiritual energy to surge. To this day, much of the region remains shrouded in spiritual mist throughout the year. Among the 9 dynasties, the Shentang dynasty was the most mysterious and the richest in legends. Many believed that immortals still hid upon its deserted islands. Guan withdrew his gaze. As interested as he was in Taoist Xianxia's divine ability, he had no desire to deliberately befriend or provoke the man. Being only one major realm above someone's backing was nowhere near enough reason for Guan to become arrogant. Develop quietly. 'Cause no waves. 1,000 years from now, how many major realms above the 9 dynasties would he stand? He was looking forward to finding out. Dark clouds covered the sky. Below, mountain ranges rose one after another, and the forests between them seemed like gathering places for demons, devils, ghosts, and monsters. A massive palace stood between 2 peaks, its crimson pillars and blood-stained eaves creating a terrifying sight. Inside the great hall, a group of black-robed figures knelt on the floor. Some were human, some were demons, and others were disembodied souls. At the very front knelt a masked man whose face could not be seen. He said, "Cult leader, the 9 dynasties have joined forces and entered the road of the 9 netherworlds. Their actions are already interfering with our grand plan. Should we withdraw or continue lying low?" His voice was hoarse, and dark ghostly ki seeped from beneath his mask whenever he spoke. Atop the steps before him stood a broad, imposing figure in loose black robes. A blood dragon coiled across the fabric, baring its fangs and claws, as though it might leap free at any moment. His snow-white hair stirred faintly. A crown of bone rested upon his head, adorned with two long, slender beast horns whose sharp tips gleamed with icy light. He was the leader of the Epiphyllum Cult's main branch, Xianxia. Xianxia slowly turned around, revealing a pale, cold face. His eyes were blood red, and two demonic marks sat upon his forehead. The twin demons shared a single body, their black forms tipped with vicious claws that made anyone who looked at them shudder. The Nine Dynasties? Ridiculous. They actually dare set foot on the road of the Nine Netherworlds. They truly are courting death. Xianxia's cold voice filled the hall as a chill wind swept through it, stirring the robes of every cultist present. A black-robed cultist with the head of a white tiger spoke. Every one of the Nine Dynasties has profound heart realm grand cultivators, and sword venerable Fu Dao of the Taishuan sect is especially unfathomable. If we want to seize the Nine Dynasties before the demonic calamity arrives, our chances may not be high. A black-robed soul added, Venerable Jinling and Fairy Yilian both died at sword venerable Fu Dao's hands. He is the greatest obstacle to our conquest of the Nine Dynasties. His cultivation is at least above the 5th level of the profound heart realm, and he may even have reached the 8th. Rumble, low thunder rolled outside the palace, like some ancient ferocious beast growling in the darkness. The 8th level of the profound heart realm? Then tell me, can Sword Venerable Fu Dao withstand the power of the Great Ascension Realm? Xianxia spoke with contempt. His white hair fluttered as vicious light flashed within his blood-red eyes. The power of the Great Ascension Realm, the masked man at the front replied. The lands of the Nine Dynasties have not witnessed a Great Ascension tribulation in nearly 10,000 years. Naturally, he cannot be your match. But if you personally take action, cult leader, will it interfere with your recovery? If you are not all so useless, would I need to? Begin gathering the cult. Once everyone has assembled, follow me and sweep across the Nine Dynasties. And remember to bring the Epiphyllum Mother Tree, Xianxia said without a change in expression. The hall erupted into uneasy murmurs. Cult leader, you don't mean to personally. The masked man's hoarse voice carried obvious tension. My decision is final. Leave. Xianxia swept his sleeve, turned, and disappeared into the darkness. The Epiphyllum cult members in the hall exchanged uncertain looks. Another night arrived, and Guan once again entered Xianxia cave abode. Half a month had passed since his previous visit. He first harvested the mature medicinal herbs, then planted new seeds. After finishing everything, he still did not hurry to leave. Instead, he decided to remain there for the night and enjoy the silence. He walked to the ancient tree beside the wooden house, jumped onto the hammock he had woven half a month earlier, shifted around until he found the most comfortable position, and lay back. Now this is comfortable. Guan smiled in satisfaction, took out a travelogue, and began reading. He had recently made a trip to the inner sect and purchased a large collection of travel records. One reason was simply to pass the time. The other was to see whether he could find somewhere more suitable than the Beihai mountain range for his next breakthrough. The cave abode was peaceful. Every so often, a small fish leapt from the underground lake, its splash echoing through the cavern and adding to the tranquil atmosphere. It was not until midnight that Guan finally set the travelogue aside. He spread out his divine sense to see whether anything interesting was happening in the Beihai mountain range that night. He checked the range every time he came here. By now, it had become a habit. Before long, Taoist Xuanmiao caught his attention. That fellow still had not left. Guan discovered that Taoist Xuanmiao had built a simple Taoist temple deep in the mountains. And besides Taoist Xuanmiao himself, there was also a young boy living there. What was he doing? Guan looked more closely. Taoist Xuanmiao was meditating before a large cauldron, thin streams of green smoke rising from the top of his head. The young boy was cultivating inside the nearby wooden house. To Guan's surprise, the boy was actually a demon, and he had a foxtail. Interesting. Guan watched for a while before withdrawing his gaze. Only when dawn was approaching did he return to Xuan Valley. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. Near the end of summer, a heavy rain had just stopped, leaving Xuan Valley oppressively humid. Early that morning, Li Ya came to visit Guan. As usual, he entered by jumping through the window, forcing Guan to play along and pretend to be startled. Look at you, frightened so easily. You're still one of the top 500 on the golden ranking, aren't you? Li Ya said lightly after landing. Guan rose to greet him. My place in the top 500 was mostly luck. You could have made the top 10, but unfortunately you ran into Anhao too early. Li Ya's mouth twitched. He suspected Guan was deliberately teasing him, but Guan looked so genuinely regretful that he could not exactly argue. Of course, Guan was doing it on purpose. You kicked my windowsill again. Li Ya walked to the writing desk, pulled out a chair, sat down, and said, I'm leaving. Where to? For how long? Guan asked casually as he moved to the tea table and began brewing tea. Li Ya replied, Imperial Father wants me to cultivate at Sanqing Mountain in the Shentong Dynasty. I'll probably be gone for several decades. It won't be easy to come back. Sanqing Mountain again. Was Li Xuandao really that closely connected to Sanqing Mountain? He had already entrusted 2 people to them. Guan could not help saying, "Then you really should go." After all, a disciple of Sanqing Mountain took 2nd place on the golden ranking. Taoist Xianxia truly is powerful. Even if I fought him, I doubt I'd be his match, Li Ya agreed. During the golden ranking tournament, Taoist Xianxia had been the only person capable of fighting An Hao for an entire incense stick's worth of time. Guan carried the freshly brewed tea over to the desk. Once you reach Sanqing Mountain, focus on cultivating properly. Stop meddling in other people's business and getting yourself hurt. Aside from being injured by An Hao, I really haven't been hurt at all these past few years. Really? Would I lie to you? The two began chatting, sometimes about Xuan Valley and sometimes about the golden ranking tournament. It was not until noon that Li Ya finally stood. I should go. Junior brother Gu, when I return, I hope your cultivation will have improved. If you can enter the golden rankings top 500, you shouldn't rely on luck alone. I believe you've found opportunities of your own, so don't waste your time. Work hard and catch up to your senior brother as soon as possible. With that, Li Ya strode to the window and jumped outside. Another footprint appeared on the sill. Definitely deliberate. Guan could only sigh. Li Ya normally acted so serious, yet whenever he was around Guan, he always seemed to enjoy these childish little games. Guan looked out the window, his gaze gradually deepening. Was there another reason Li Xuandao had chosen to send Li Ya away now? And why had the soul inside Li Ya's body become so weak? It felt as if it might disperse at any moment. Guan shook his head. If he could not figure it out, he simply would not waste time thinking about it. Night eventually fell. Guan once again entered Xuanxin Cave abode. He had only just prepared to harvest the medicinal herbs when his brows suddenly tightened. Why was Taoist Shimiao so close? His Taoist temple was 8,000 li away. There was no way he had come here by coincidence, right? At the same time, more than 10 li away in the forest, Taoist Xuanmiao walked forward with a compass in his hand, muttering to himself, "It should be somewhere around here. I wonder what kind of fortunate encounter it will be." Guan listened to his muttering in silence. He had come looking for a fortunate encounter, and somehow found Guan's doorstep? Guan's gaze settled on the compass in Taoist Xuanmiao's hand. What kind of treasure could actually locate opportunities? It seemed far more useful than his white spirit mouse. Ever since the Xuanqing tree appeared, the white spirit mouse spent all day sleeping and had completely stopped searching for treasures. It was practically useless now. Late at night, the forest was silent and a light mist drifted between the trees. Taoist Xuanmiao could see ghostly shadows passing through the fog, yet he remained perfectly still. Whoosh! A powerful gust swept in from ahead, whipping his Taoist robes and forcing him to narrow his eyes. This is the dwelling place of a mountain god. Mortals may not proceed. An ethereal voice drifted through the forest. Taoist Xuanmiao stopped immediately and looked around. But there was no sign of the speaker. Even after searching with divine sense, he could not detect the slightest trace of life. Certain that he had not imagined the voice, Taoist Xuanmiao cupped his hands. This humble Taoist comes from Sanqing Mountain of the Shentong Dynasty. I am the sole inheriting disciple of the supreme pure lineage Li Xuanmiao Li Xuanmiao, Li Xuandao. Guan would rather die than believe there was no connection between them. The name Sanqing also reminded Guan of the 3 pure ones from Taoist mythology in his previous life in China. He could not help wondering whether there was any relationship. Hopefully not. Otherwise, writing investiture of the gods might already have caused him trouble. Perhaps the Tao of the 3 pure ones illuminated countless heavens. If traces of them existed in this world, maybe the world of China had been touched by them as well? Thoughts flashed through Guan's mind like lightning, but he did not answer immediately. Taoist Xuanmiao continued. This humble Taoist came seeking a fortunate encounter. May I ask whether I might have the honor of meeting the mountain god? He did not seem suspicious of Guan at all, which made Guan wonder. Could mountain gods truly exist in this world, making such an encounter seem perfectly normal to Taoist Xuanmiao? That thought suddenly gave Guan the urge to interact with him. It might broaden his understanding of this world. Why do you wish to meet the mountain god? Guan's voice sounded again, still impossible to locate. Taoist Xuanmiao replied, Immortals and gods in the mortal world are elusive beyond measure. If I could meet one, it would naturally be a blessing of a lifetime. Of course, I also have a small personal request. The possibility of meeting a mountain god genuinely delighted him. To him, it was far more meaningful than simply stumbling upon another treasure. He swept the surrounding area with the divine sense of a soul formation realm cultivator, yet found nothing. The difference between their cultivation realms had to be enormous. Even if the other party was not truly a mountain god, he was certainly a grand cultivator far beyond Taoist Xuanmiao. And since the hidden expert had not attacked him outright, that alone suggested he was no great villain. Whether he was truly a mountain god or not, he was worth befriending. Whoosh! Another gust struck him head-on, carrying fallen leaves through the air. Taoist Xuanmiao raised an arm to shield his face. When the wind passed, he looked forward, and his pupils suddenly contracted in astonishment. Standing upon the branch of a great tree ahead was a tiny figure dressed in white. That's right, tiny. Barely 3 inches tall, small enough to fit inside a single hand. The miniature figure wore white robes and a theatrical mask, giving him an extraordinarily mysterious appearance. The tiny man was Guan. He had used the size-at-will divine ability to shrink his body. Size-at-will was a divine ability awakened from the innate wish-fulfilling art, while the innate wish-fulfilling art itself was the aura concealment cultivation technique that had evolved step by step from his original nourishing qi art. Taoist Xuanmiao immediately dropped to one knee and cupped his hands. Li Xuanmiao greets the mountain god. He could tell this was no illusion. It was the first time in his life he had seen a person truly shrink to such a size, and that alone was enough to convince him that the figure before him really was a mountain god. He had never encountered a spell or divine ability that could truly shrink one's body. At most, he had seen techniques that drew people into miniature spatial domains. Guan bounded along the tree branch until he reached its tip. Looking down at Taoist Xuanmiao, he asked, "What is that treasure in your hand?" At the same time, he activated lifespan detection. Taoist Xuanmiao 5th level Soul Formation Realm, 198, 900, 4500. A maximum lifespan of 4,500 years? That seemed strangely high compared with what his cultivation suggested. The inheritance of San King Mountain was clearly extraordinary. Taoist Xuanmiao hurriedly replied, "This is a treasure passed down through a single line in San King Mountain. I always keep it with me. When my fortune resonates with the treasure, it guides me toward fortunate encounters arranged by fate and helps accelerate my growth." A bright smile appeared on his face as he spoke. Fate had arranged for him to meet the mountain god. Guan could not help wondering, could Zhuanshan Cave Abode originally have been destined for Taoist Xuanmiao? It was entirely possible. If Guan had not possessed his lifespan ability, he would never have come to the Beihai mountain range for his tribulation, never broken through the seals around Zhuanshan Cave Abode, and never claimed the place for himself. Thinking about it that way, Guan had effectively taken Taoist Xuanmiao's destined opportunity. Taoist Xuanmiao continued, "Senior, I recently accepted a disciple, but he has been afflicted by a powerful poison that I cannot cure. Would you be willing to take a look at him?" He had originally come only to search for a fortunate encounter. He had never expected to meet a mountain god. And if this truly was a divine being, perhaps the worry weighing on his heart could finally be resolved. Guan said nothing. Instead, he lifted one hand to his chin, supported that elbow with the other, and slowly nodded as he studied Taoist Xuanmiao. Taoist Xuanmiao immediately understood. With a turn of his palm, a stalk of spirit Lingji appeared. He raised it with both hands. "This is a 6th rank Earth Spirit Mystic Lingji. Please accept it, mountain god." Guan flicked his hand. The Lingji flew into his grasp. It was larger than his entire shrunken body, making the sight rather ridiculous. Taoist Xuanmiao did not find it funny at all. If anything, he thought the scene looked even more mystical. The actions and thoughts of immortals and gods were not things mortals should casually judge or define. "Bring your disciple here at this same hour tomorrow night," said. Taoist Xuanmiao immediately bowed in gratitude. By the time he raised his head again, Guan had already vanished. Smiling, Taoist Xuanmiao stood and left without taking another step deeper into the mountains. That pleased Guan considerably. At least for now, Taoist Xuanmiao did not seem like the kind of person who schemed constantly or played underhanded tricks. When Guan had inspected him earlier, he had already seen the young demon disciple and identified the poison within the boy. As it happened, Guan knew how to cure it. Once Taoist Xuanmiao had gone far enough away, Guan returned to 8 Centuries Grotto Heaven and began refining pills. He took out the epiphyllum flower he had kept in storage, placed it inside the alchemy furnace, then condensed supreme pure true fire beneath the cauldron. A thought suddenly occurred to him. Could the alchemy tradition of Xuan Valley also have originated from San King Mountain? Was that why its techniques could eventually evolve into supreme pure true fire? It was genuinely possible. The following day, Taoist Xuanmiao returned with his disciple. They came to the same mist-covered forest. The young fox demon was visibly nervous. He stayed close to Taoist Xuanmiao, constantly scanning the surroundings. Clearly, he was afraid some evil entity might appear. Taoist Xuanmiao lifted the hem of his robe, knelt on the spot, and instructed the fox demon boy to kneel as well. After they had waited for a while, a strong wind swept through the forest. A thumb-sized medicinal pill rolled across the ground and stopped in front of Taoist Xuanmiao's knees. He picked it up in surprise. "Have your disciple swallow it."
Lan's voice
Drifted through the air. Taoist Xuanmiao did not hesitate and immediately told the fox demon boy to take the pill. The medicine dissolved the instant it entered his mouth. Taoist Xuanmiao grasped the boy's wrist and carefully examined his condition. Very quickly, delight appeared on his face. He looked up and asked, "Mountain God, may I ask what poison my disciple was suffering from?" "Epiphyllum poison. He must have passed through a place where epiphyllum flowers were growing and accidentally eaten one." Guan appeared atop a tree branch as he answered. The fox demon boy's eyes went wide when he saw the pocket-sized mountain god. Taoist Xuanmiao's expression darkened. Gritting his teeth, he said, "The Epiphyllum Cult truly is a scourge that has plagued the world for 1,000 years. Their crimes are beyond counting." Guan crouched on the branch and looked at them. "Your disciple is cured. You should leave now. Remember, do not let anyone learn of my existence. Otherwise, I will bring trouble upon you." Taoist Xuanmiao looked up. "Mountain God, could you teach me a supreme art that would allow me to become the strongest beneath heaven? I am willing to exchange everything I possess for it." His defeat at Anhao's hands had become a knot in his heart. It was also the reason he had delayed returning to his sect for so long. He truly felt he had no face to meet his fellow disciples. The strongest beneath heaven? If you were capable of becoming the strongest beneath heaven on your own, you would not have come looking for me. And if you cannot become the strongest beneath heaven, then everything you own combined is not worth the price of those words. Guan spoke indifferently. Taoist Xuanmiao's expression turned ugly, yet hope quietly rose in his heart. The mountain god had not actually refused him, and that made sense. Even generations of Sun King Mountain disciples rarely encountered true immortals walking the mortal world. That alone proved how difficult such beings were to find. Taoist Xuanmiao said, "Please give me guidance, mountain god. As long as it is something I can accomplish, and as long as it does not violate the principles of Sun King Mountain, I will agree." Guan crossed his arms and pretended to think deeply. After a long pause, he suddenly said, "There is one thing. What is the divine ability you used to summon that profound heart realm cultivator? Use that to trade with me." Taoist Xuanmiao's expression changed dramatically. His reverence toward the mountain god deepened even further. The mountain god had actually seen through the cultivation realm of the person he summoned. His Tao attainment was clearly unfathomable, and the place where Taoist Xuanmiao had fought that battle was unbelievably far from here. He hurriedly said, "That divine ability is called the Mystic Gate of Divine Summoning. It can only summon another person and does not directly harm living beings. I am willing to exchange it with you, mountain god." As he spoke, he drew a scroll from his sleeve and raised it with both hands. Guan flicked his hand, drawing the scroll onto the branch beside him. He swept it once with divine sense, confirmed that it was genuine, then waved his right hand. A book dropped in front of Taoist Xuanmiao. "Nine Extremes Yin-Yang Body." The moment he saw those words, Taoist Xuanmiao's eyes lit up. Guan planned to upgrade the Nine Extremes Yin-Yang Body sooner or later, so he felt no reluctance about passing it on. Besides, the art had originally come from the Thousand Autumn Pavilion. He wanted to see how many years someone with Taoist Xuanmiao's aptitude would need to master the Nine Extremes Yin-Yang Body. Taoist Xuanmiao picked up the manual and began reading. Guan was in no hurry and calmly stored the Mystic Gate of Divine Summoning scroll in his storage pouch. After reading for a while, Taoist Xuanmiao's hands began to tremble. He abruptly closed the manual and tucked it into his robes. Then he took 7 wooden boxes from the storage ring on his thumb. "This supreme art is far more valuable than the Mystic Gate of Divine Summoning. I cannot take advantage of you. These are all seeds of 7th rank heavenly treasures, gifts given to me by various dynasties. I originally intended to use them to improve my own cave abode, but now I offer them to you." He really knew how to behave. Guan's impression of Taoist Xuanmiao improved considerably. He raised a hand, drawing all 7 wooden boxes onto the branch beside him. "You may leave now." Taoist Xuanmiao immediately kowtowed, then made the young fox demon do the same. Afterward, he pulled the boy away without lingering. Watching them disappear into the distance, Guan sighed inwardly. What a troublesome bond of fate. The troublesome bond he meant was not between himself and Taoist Xuanmiao, but between Taoist Xuanmiao and the fox demon boy. Unable to resist, Guan used lifespan detection again. Yellow Springs Fox Demon 4th level Qi Refining Realm, 14,999, 14,000. That maximum lifespan was exactly the same as the Yellow Springs Demon Emperors. And both even carried the name Yellow Springs. There had to be a connection. Guan was beginning to suspect this foolish-looking little fox might actually be the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor himself. The sky was clear and the air crisp, while an early autumn breeze brought a refreshing coolness. At the 3rd Medicine Valley, Guan was harvesting medicinal herbs while Lu Lingjun followed behind him with a bamboo basket. Collecting each bundle he carefully prepared. You hardly ever do anything dangerous. Why exactly do I need to protect you? Lu Lingjun complained resentfully. She was a dignified inner sect elder, yet she had been assigned to protect an outer sect disciple. If word got out, would the other inner sect elders not laugh themselves senseless? I barely bother you in daily life. You're enjoying the treatment of an inner sect elder, and you can even comprehend the Tao beneath the Xuanqing tree. Do you know how many elders envy you? Guan replied casually, unable to stop the corners of his mouth from rising. The herbs he was harvesting now were all 6th rank. Every single plant could grant him anywhere from 60 to 100 years of lifespan. Growing flowers and herbs really was the most comfortable path. Killing an integration realm cultivator would probably grant him about the same amount, and that would also drag him into grudges and karmic trouble. Lu Lingjun had to admit Guan had a point, but she still felt the work damaged her dignity. At the very least, Lu Baitian clearly did not treat her with enough respect. Lu Lingjun had already set a new goal for herself. She would become sect master of the Taishuan sect. Since Lu Baitian had tied her fate to Guan's, then she needed to build an even better relationship with him. Guan possessed enormous advantages. The high-grade medicinal herbs in this valley alone were enough to give him significant influence. In the future, she would protect Guan, then borrow his medicinal resources to win people over, gradually forming a power block centered around the two of them, before climbing step by step toward the top. As Lu Lingjun imagined it, a radiant smile bloomed across her face like a flower in spring. Anne happened to glance over at that exact moment and immediately felt goosebumps rise along his arms. Why are you making such a strange face? You aren't plotting something against me, are you? Guan asked warily. Lu Lingjun smiled sweetly. How could I plot against you? You're my valley master. If you hadn't helped me make the right connections, would I be enjoying this kind of treatment today? Ahem. I don't even restrict how long you cultivate beneath the tree anymore. In terms of benefits, isn't your situation better now? The Taishuan sect only has a handful of 7th-ranked treasure trees after all. Guan gave a fake cough, then lowered his head and continued harvesting. Yes, you're right. I owe you a favor anyway. I'll repay it in the future. That's more like it. Lu Lingjun stopped distracting him from his work. An incense stick later, the two began walking back. On the way, Lu Lingjun asked, Valley Master, don't you want to raise your cultivation? The fact that you made it onto the golden ranking proves your aptitude isn't bad. You simply don't like cultivating very much. The higher Guan's cultivation became, the more useful he would be to her grand plan. Maybe my aptitude isn't terrible, but I'm definitely no genius. I relied on magical artifacts. Don't bother trying to persuade me. Even if I cultivate bitterly and manage to live 700 or 800 years, most of that life would be spent cultivating. Why not simply enjoy the years I have? By refusing to cultivate obsessively, I'm actually saving myself from taking a pointless detour. My talent isn't remotely comparable to yours. Guan spoke with complete conviction, yet for some reason, Lu Lingjun sensed a trace of sadness beneath his words. As an ascender, she had traveled this road for a very long time. She had seen far too many people spend their entire lives struggling, only to discover that they could never escape the limits of fate. Countless cultivators trained bitterly for a lifetime, only to die beneath heavenly tribulations, in vendettas or to heart demons. Even Lu Lingjun herself could not help wondering, if she added together every truly happy moment in her entire life, had she actually enjoyed more happiness than the man walking in front of her? At that moment, the image of Guan within her heart quietly changed. His cultivation might be low, but he possessed a breadth of spirit and a way of looking at life that most living beings could never achieve. Lu Lingjun quickened her pace to catch up. Valley Master, then do you think I should learn from you? Learn from me? Don't be ridiculous. Your cultivation realm has already proven your talent. Life is ultimately about what you choose to strive for. My aptitude is poor, so I strive for greater depth in life. Your aptitude is exceptional, so you should strive for greater length. Guan answered casually. He had no intention of encouraging others to imitate him. He could seize lifespan from other things. They could not. His entire argument was merely an excuse to conceal his true strength, not some philosophy he wanted to spread to others. After hearing him, Lu Lingjun admired him even more. The two continued chatting until they returned to the pavilion district. It was not until evening that Guan traveled to Xuanqian cave abode. Half a month had passed since he exchanged divine abilities with Taoist Xuanmiao. Guan had already planted the 7th rank heavenly treasure seeds Taoist Xuanmiao gave him inside Xuanqian cave abode. He was not particularly worried about the place being discovered. If that ever happened, he could simply move the entire cave abode somewhere else. With size at will, he could shrink the whole mountain and relocate it. Because the 7 seeds were so valuable, he came to inspect them every other day, worried that they might grow improperly or interfere with one another. After checking everything and finding no problems, Guan smiled. These days he was harvesting lifespan all year round. Running from one place to another did not tire him at all. If anything, he found it enjoyable. After his next breakthrough, he planned to establish another cave abode somewhere else and find someone trustworthy to manage it for him, while he remained responsible for the harvesting. The ideal manager would need to be someone capable of enduring long periods of solitude, but that was a problem for the future. Guan walked to the wooden house, took out the Z-Way formation record along with a pile of formation materials, and began experimenting with array formations. A new cave abode would definitely require many formations. He wanted to prepare as much as possible in advance. At the same time, several thousand li away, hidden inside a small Taoist temple deep in the mountain forest, Taoist Xianxia sat before an alchemy furnace cultivating the 9 extremes yin-yang body. His hands constantly formed changing seals, while streams of dark blue-black demonic chi seeped from his body and coiled around him. Someone lightly knocked on the door. Without opening his eyes, Taoist Xianxia said, "Come in." The door opened, and the young fox demon stepped inside. He came before Taoist Xianxia, knelt down and said softly, "Master, I just had a nightmare." "What kind of nightmare?" "I dreamed the sky shattered. Countless demons and cultivators poured out and began slaughtering every living thing on the ground. I also saw an enormous, terrifying tree, and faces were growing from its trunk." As the fox demon boy described the dream, his body began trembling. It was hard to tell whether the shivering came from fear or from the cold wind blowing in from outside. Taoist Xianxia opened his eyes. The demonic ki around him dispersed as he took out his compass and began performing a divination. The fox demon boy stared at him, fascinated by the treasure in his master's hands. The compass released a brilliant glow, and countless points of starlight rose above it. Taoist Xianxia lifted his other hand and pointed a finger at the boy's forehead. The fox demon immediately froze in place, unable to move. His eyes widened as his gaze involuntarily tilted upward. With a motion of his finger, Taoist Xianxia drew strands of light from the boy's forehead and guided them into the starlight above the compass. Boom! A wave of force burst from the treasure. The points of starlight exploded and merged into an illusion, the very nightmare the young fox demon had just described. Within the vision, the sky repeatedly tore open. Black cracks spread above mountains and forests as countless demons and black-robed cultivators poured through. Wherever they passed, black smoke engulfed the land, plants withered, and living creatures were reduced to white bones. The horrifying scenes made Taoist Xianxia frown. After watching for a short while, his expression suddenly changed. He had recognized Beihai. The fox demon boy was equally frightened. Even though it was his own dream, he clearly did not want to see it again. A long time later, Taoist Xianxia put away the compass and walked out into the courtyard. He took out sheets of yellow talisman paper and rapidly wrote line after line across them. When he finished, he stacked the papers together and burned them with spiritual fire. The yellow paper turned to ash, but the ashes shimmered faintly before quickly vanishing without a trace. Standing behind him, the fox demon boy asked, "Master, what are you doing?" "Sending a message back to the sect. To Sanqing Mountain, the place you always talk about?" "That's right, Master." "When will you take me to Sanqing Mountain?" "Cultivate properly first. Outsiders who want to enter Sanqing Mountain must pass layer after layer of examination. Your cultivation and temperament are not ready yet," Taoist Xianxia answered casually. After thinking for a moment, he gave the boy a few instructions and left the temple. Moonlight filtered through the leaves and fell across the fox demon boy. He watched Taoist Xianxia disappear into the distance. Gradually, the harmless innocence vanished from his small face, replaced by coldness. A chilling light flickered in his eyes. Mountain God, inside Xianxian cave abode, Guan lowered the brush and talisman paper in his hands. His expression became serious. "The Yellow Springs fox demon has developed hostility toward you and fears your strength. Would you like to use lifespan detection on him?" "Fear? What level of hostility did that even count as? Should he kill him?" The moment Guan remembered that the Yellow Springs fox demon possessed a maximum lifespan of 14,000 years, an uncomfortable feeling rose in his heart. Demons naturally lived longer than humans at the same cultivation realm, but anything capable of living beyond 10,000 years would eventually become a world-shaking great demon. Guan raised his eyes. Through divine sense, he saw Taoist Xianxia hurrying toward him. He would meet Taoist Xianxia first. An incense stick later, Taoist Xianxia entered the mountain forest, knelt on the ground, and called loudly. This humble Taoist has an urgent matter and requests an audience with the mountain god. The moment his words fell, the mountain god appeared without warning on a nearby tree branch. Taoist Xianxia could not help admiring the divine being's unfathomable methods even more. Before Guan could speak, Taoist Xianxia took out his compass and began reproducing the dream while explaining what his disciple had seen. Once the illusion fully formed, Taoist Xianxia said, "Beihai appeared in the dream. This may be a calamity destined for the Beihai region." Guan sighed inwardly. Trouble. The Epiphyllum Cult again. The tree in the dream was clearly an epiphyllum tree. It seemed the main branch of the Epiphyllum Cult was preparing to launch an all-out assault on the Nine Dynasties. Just how many of those epiphyllum trees did they have? Guan was beginning to feel a genuine urge to eradicate the Epiphyllum Cult completely, if only to stop these idiots from interfering with his farming. Before that, however, he decided to give the Yellow Springs Fox Demon a little warning. Your disciple is not simple. Whether he brings fortune or disaster is difficult to say. Guan deliberately spoke in a vague, mysterious tone. Taoist Xianxia's expression changed dramatically. He seemed to remember something, and cold sweat immediately began forming across his forehead. His reaction actually confused Guan. Was one vague sentence from me really that powerful? Taoist Xianxia remembered something his master had once told him. Xianxia, you will face 9 tribulations in this life. Every one will be a life and death calamity, born from your entanglement with the mortal world. You cannot hide from them. You cannot escape them. Only by breaking through each tribulation can you attain Nirvana. He looked at Guan again, reverence filling his eyes. As expected of a mountain god, he could see through fate itself and even karma. Taoist Xianxia took a deep breath, slowly rose and bowed. Thank you for your guidance, mountain god. I will be careful. With that, he turned and left. Guan tilted his head, utterly confused beneath his theatrical mask. After returning to Xianxia cave abode, he lost all interest in practicing formations. Instead, he followed Taoist Xianxia with divine sense to see what happened next. Sure enough, the moment Taoist Xianxia returned to the temple, a conflict broke out between him and the Yellow Springs Fox Demon. As if the heavens wanted to make the scene even more dramatic, heavy rain suddenly began pouring down, filling the night with roaring noise. In the storm, Taoist Xianxia stood with his treasured sword in hand and demanded to know the Yellow Springs Fox Demon's true origins. The Fox Demon panicked and claimed he had once been badly injured and lost his memories. If Taoist Xianxia had not saved him, he would already have died beneath another demon's claws. The two master and disciple argued fiercely in the rain. After a long confrontation, Taoist Xianxia began muttering about breaking his tribulation. He looked almost possessed as he suddenly swung his sword toward the Fox Demon. The Yellow Springs Fox Demon fled in terror, desperately begging for mercy. But Taoist Xianxia showed no sign of softening. Guan sensed a trace of demonic qi within Taoist Xianxia. He could not tell whether the man's nature had always contained a demonic side, or whether it had emerged after cultivating the 9 extremes yin-yang body. Finally, the Yellow Springs Fox Demon could no longer maintain the act. Powerful demonic qi erupted from his body as he began madly absorbing the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. In moments, it condensed into a terrifying demonic phantom. Almost like some kind of summoning technique, the phantom's aura rivaled a 9th-level void-crossing realm cultivator. Guan immediately suspected it was the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor. Taoist Xianxia's soul formation cultivation was nowhere near enough to resist such a being. At the critical moment, he used the mystic gate of divine summoning again, and called upon the profound heart realm cultivator behind him. The moment that grand cultivator acted, the demonic phantom was crushed apart. The Yellow Springs Fox Demon seized the opportunity to flee. At the final moment, Taoist Xianxia still softened. He asked the profound heart realm cultivator to spare the Fox Demon's life. Once the mystic gate of divine summoning disappeared, Taoist Xianxia collapsed again and began coughing up blood violently. It seemed using that divine ability came at an enormous price. What a dramatic family dispute. Guan watched with fascination, almost as though he were reading a novel. The Yellow Springs Fox Demon has developed hostility toward you. His hatred reaches the bone. Would you like to use lifespan detection on him? There it was. Time to work. Guan stood and stretched his limbs. Deep in the mountains, the Yellow Springs Fox Demon fled at high speed through the pouring rain, looking utterly miserable. After running for an unknown amount of time, he stopped beneath a large tree and clutched the wound at his waist. Rain soaked his long hair while his face twisted with hatred. Mountain God, damn you. I was so close to succeeding. The Yellow Springs Fox Demon muttered to himself, killing intent filling his eyes. He did not believe in any so-called mountain god. That tiny figure had to be some strange evil entity in disguise. Either way, anyone who dared ruin his plan to infiltrate Sand King Mountain had to pay. Are you talking about me? A voice sounded beside the Yellow Springs Fox Demon's ear. He instinctively turned his head and saw a tiny white-robed figure wearing a theatrical mask standing on his shoulder. Before he could react, terrifying divine sense crashed into his soul. So that's where you were hiding. The instant Guan's divine sense entered the Fox Demon's body, he discovered another primordial spirit concealed deep within its soul, the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor. This fellow truly was impressive. His concealment had been good enough to escape the notice of a Great Ascension Realm cultivator. Unfortunately, he should never have developed malicious intentions toward Guan. Guan immediately used the soul-capturing art and began reading the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor's memories. The Demon Emperor's memories were vast beyond measure. Guan had no patience to search through all of them, so he focused only on the most recent century. After a rapid soul search, he finally understood the man's origins. The Yellow Springs Demon Emperor came from the Road of the Nine Netherworlds. He was a demon native to that realm and had spent years being hunted by the Epiphyllum Cult. 200 years earlier, when the cult was constructing the Road of the Nine Netherworlds, he had seized the opportunity to escape into the lands of the Nine Dynasties. Over the next 2 centuries, he traveled across the world and visited many sects. The one he considered most formidable was Xianxia Mountain. Its Taoist heritage was incredibly deep, and the sect had existed for more than 10,000 years, making it the oldest sect in the Nine Dynasties. He had once tried to sneak inside, only to be discovered before he had even taken half a step through the mountain gate. He nearly died there. From that day onward, however, Xianxia Mountain remained fixed in his mind. The Yellow Springs Fox Demon was nothing more than a young fox whose body had been possessed by the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor. The fox's original soul had already been erased. The Demon Emperor had used an exceptionally subtle possession technique that was extremely difficult to detect. The reason he had shown Taoist Xuanmiao the vision of the Epiphyllum Cult's invasion was to force him to return to Xianxia Mountain instead of lingering in the Beihai Mountain range. He never expected Taoist Xuanmiao to take the dream to the mountain god. That caused the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor to develop hostility. After Taoist Xuanmiao returned and confronted him, the battle between them transformed that hostility toward the mountain god into outright killing intent. The entire affair had unfolded through a bizarre chain of coincidence. But since the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor now wanted Guan dead, Guan could no longer allow him to live. A long while later, Guan withdrew his divine sense and ignited supreme pure true fire. The flames consumed the Yellow Springs Fox Demon completely, reducing flesh and soul alike to ash. Guan successfully gained 93 years of lifespan. He then returned to the Taishuan sect. Back inside his pavilion in Xuan Valley, Guan sat at the writing desk and took out brush and paper. The first thing he wrote was 3 large words: Nine Netherworlds Domain. Through the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor's memories, Guan learned that the Road of the Nine Netherworlds was actually an independent world known as the Nine Netherworlds Domain. Demons, devils, ghosts, and evil entities lived there, and they had long suffered beneath the oppression of the Epiphyllum Cult. Guan planned to compile everything he knew about the Nine Netherworlds Domain into an encyclopedia. Later, he would find another way to deliver it anonymously to the Taishuan sect so that the sect could explore the realm more safely. Autumn leaves covered Xuan Valley while more than 20 servant disciples swept the paths clean. Guan came downstairs just as several Taishuan sect disciples flew overhead at great speed. He gave them only a passing glance before turning toward the teleportation platform, intending to visit the Third Medicine Valley. Before he reached it, however, he sensed an approaching aura. Guan stopped and turned toward the servant disciples working nearby. An incense stick later, Yi Lan flew into the valley, grabbed Guan and pulled him upstairs to talk. Once the door was closed, Yi Lan said solemnly, "There's an emergency on the Road of the Nine Netherworlds. The Epiphyllum Cult has arrived, and a major battle is about to break out. It's not only the Road of the Nine Netherworlds, either Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivators are appearing everywhere. This time is completely different from before. The law enforcement hall has been sent out to protect the common people. I have to leave today." "That urgent?" Guan immediately took out several bottles of healing pills and handed them to her. Yi Lan accepted them without hesitation. "You need to be careful during this period too. According to our previous investigations, there are still Epiphyllum Cult spies inside the Taishuan sect. This time we're facing the cult's main force. They may throw everything they have into the attack. This is a calamity that may not appear even once in 1,000 years. I understand. You be careful too. And don't let the white spirit sword leave your hand," Guan said with a nod. Yi Lan raised the white spirit sword and smiled. "I won't." She passed on several more pieces of important intelligence, then hurried away. Guan stood outside the pavilion and watched her leave. He could already sense battles erupting far in the distance, and not in only one place. The Epiphyllum Cult's offensive this time was far more aggressive than before. Previously, they had been defending. Now they were invading. Guan had no intention of acting yet. He would let the Nine Dynasties resist first, and avoid alerting the true enemy too early. His real target was the Great Ascension Realm cultivator behind the Epiphyllum Cult. Before facing that person, however, Guan decided to find somewhere to make another breakthrough. Great Ascension Realm against Great Ascension Realm? Not enough. Guan had far too little true life-and-death combat experience. His opponent, meanwhile, was almost certainly an old monster who had survived for thousands of years. Guan was not skilled at desperate battles between equals. He was skilled at crushing his enemies. He needed to find a suitable breakthrough location. The Beihai mountain range would not work anymore. Xianxia cave abode was located there, and he had no desire to destroy the local spiritual environment. After settling on a plan, Guan first visited the Third Medicine Valley, then headed for the Inner Sect. With the Valley Master token of the Third Medicine Valley, he could freely enter the Inner Sect. Half an hour later, Guan stepped into one of the Inner Sect cities. He had not visited in several months, and the atmosphere had become extraordinarily tense. Cultivators hurried through the streets with grim expressions. He overheard disciples discussing the Epiphyllum Cult's invasion. Apparently, the news had already been publicly announced throughout all 4 major Inner Sect cities. From their conversations, Guan learned that the Tai Kang dynasty was not the only realm under attack. The other 8 dynasties were facing the same situation. The second group of disciples sent into the Road of the 9 Netherworlds had reportedly suffered more than 50% casualties. One elder had even died inside the realm. Even Guan could not remain completely unaffected. After hearing how serious the situation had become, he made his way to the scripture hall and climbed to the 3rd floor. This level was filled with maps and books describing the geography of the world. Because of the Epiphyllum Cult's attack, very few disciples remained inside the hall. On the 3rd floor, only Guan and the elder responsible for managing the collection were present. A long time later, while Guan was reading, an aged voice came from nearby. "Young friend, what are you searching for?" Guan turned and saw Elder Shulu slowly walking toward him. He turned fully and bowed. This disciple wants to see just how vast the world truly is. Shulu looked old and frail, but he actually possessed nascent soul realm cultivation. Nascent soul was the minimum threshold for becoming an Inner Sect elder. Looking for the largest map? You won't find it out here. Follow me. Shulu tilted his head and motioned for Guan to come with him. Guan was secretly puzzled. Why was the elder going out of his way to help him? Still, he followed quietly, planning to adapt to whatever happened. "You came here before to buy Xianxia's travels, didn't you?" Shulu asked casually. Guan replied, "That's right. Does Senior have some advice for me?" "So this was about Xianxia's travels," Shulu said slowly. "Ever since a book called the Taishuan Secret Chronicle began circulating through the streets, hardly anyone buys Xianxia's travels anymore. That friend of mine has been terribly disheartened by it. Since you still enjoy his travelogues, I'll lend you a continental map I've treasured for years. It was drawn by a supreme elder who once traveled across the world." Guan immediately became interested. "Senior, is Xianxia a man or a woman?" "A man, of course. What woman would write books like that?" "Is Xianxia still in the sect?" "No. He left long ago, but every so often he has someone send another manuscript back." The two talked as they walked to a closed door. Shulu told Guan to wait outside, then pushed it open and entered. He returned shortly afterward carrying a large scroll and a book. Handing both to Guan, he said, "Take these home and make copies. Remember to return them the next time you visit." Guan stored the map and book in his storage pouch, then bowed in thanks. Shulu warned him, "With your cultivation, you should limit your travels to the 9 dynasties. Before forming a nascent soul, don't enter the lands ruled by demons. And whatever you do, don't sail south across the sea." "This junior understands," Guan replied. Shulu waved his hand, indicating that he could go. Guan turned to leave, but the moment he reached the top of the stairs, he felt a powerful divine sense sweep across his body. There was a profound heart realm cultivator inside the building. Could some supreme elder be here reading in seclusion? Including ancestor Xuanquan, the Taishuan sect now had at least 2 profound heart realm cultivators. The discovery only strengthened Guan's desire to break through. It was all the Epiphyllum Cult's fault. Their return had dragged so many old monsters back into the open. Guan did not use his own divine sense to search for the profound heart realm cultivator inside the scripture hall. Lifespan detection could not be activated through divine sense vision anyway, so there was little point. Worse, what if the hidden expert practiced some unusual secret art capable of detecting someone probing from a higher realm? Guan would only be inviting trouble. After returning to Xuan Valley, Guan went upstairs and took out the map and book Shu Lu had lent him. The book was titled Records of the World's Lands. It contained broad descriptions of different regions and could be used to identify every boundary marked on the map. Guan studied it carefully, searching for a suitable place to make his breakthrough. According to the map, the 9 dynasties occupied only about 1/10 of the entire continent. Everything beyond their borders was dominated by demons and monsters. The mountains, rivers, and wildernesses there bore ominous names such as Demon Shadow Peak, the Demon Bone Mountain Range, Human Head Ghost Forest, Fallen Immortal River, and many others. The more Guan considered it, the more convinced he became that he should make his breakthrough in demon territory. Those lands were filled with abundant spiritual energy, and historically, even the demon territories were less dangerous than the ocean. The map itself proved that much. After all, a supreme elder had successfully traveled across the entire continent and returned to draw it. When night finally fell, Guan slipped away in silence, first heading east and then turning north. He held the map in one hand while using the limitless free step, crossing the darkness at tremendous speed. Before long, he had already left the Taikang dynasty behind. In fewer than 20 steps, Guan passed beyond the borders of all 9 dynasties and entered the demon lands. The concentration of demonic chi, devil chi, and ghostly chi immediately multiplied. Everywhere his divine sense reached, evil entities could be found. Looking into the distance, he saw mountains and rivers buried beneath thick mist. Towering peaks loomed within the haze like colossal demons, half hidden and half revealed, creating an oppressive and sinister landscape. Guan sensed countless living beings, the overwhelming majority of them demons and monsters. He occasionally discovered human cultivators as well. Under cover of night, they hid themselves carefully and set up formations to conceal their presence. Nearly half an hour later, Guan arrived at Tianhuang Mountain. It was an immense mountain range, with peaks rising more than 10,000 zhang high and stretching for tens of thousands of li. According to records of the world's lands, a phoenix had descended upon this mountain during the ancient era and produced descendants there. That was how Tianhuang Mountain received its name. The entire mountain range was now occupied by demons. When the author of Records of the World's Lands passed through the region, he had even been attacked by a great demon at the Integration Realm. Tianhuang Mountain's spiritual energy might not rank among the richest places on the continent, but at least it was not considered completely forbidden territory. Guan spread his divine sense across the entire range. He sensed 3 Integration Realm great demons, more than 1 million intelligent demons, and countless lesser beasts that had not yet awakened spiritual intelligence. If a single mountain range contained this many demons, no wonder a great demonic calamity could form. Guan descended onto the mountainside and entered a forest. Sitting beneath a tree, he immediately activated the lifespan barrier. The woods around him were sparse, while demonic ki rolled through the air. Night wind bent the weeds into waves, creating a strange and unsettling scene. Guan observed his surroundings for a moment, then withdrew his gaze and opened his status interface. When he saw that he possessed 2,380,000 years of lifespan, his heart ached slightly. Who knew how many times this breakthrough would fail? He would probably have to sacrifice several years' worth of accumulated gains. But he had to succeed. Survival was the most important thing. He would start by investing 100,000 years and see what happened. With a thought, Guan poured lifespan into his cultivation. You have invested 100,000 years of lifespan into your cultivation to begin a cultivation evolution. Oh. After cultivating for 4,000 years, you use the perfected innate earth immortal art to force a breakthrough into the Nirvana realm. The tribulation begins. You fail to survive the innate 5 elements divine lightning tribulation. Breakthrough failed. After cultivating ki for 8,000 years, you use the perfected innate earth immortal art to force a breakthrough into the Nirvana realm. The tribulation begins. You fail to survive the innate 5 elements divine lightning tribulation. Breakthrough failed. Wonderful. 1 tribulation attempt every 4,000 years? No wonder the Nirvana realm was considered the first great barrier among the 9 tribulations of the immortal Tao. Lines of notifications flashed before him one after another, but Guan's expression did not change. 100,000 years of lifespan vanished just like that. Another 100,000. The cultivation evolution began again. Guan's brows tightened slightly. Every attempt failed. Another 100,000. Guan refused to believe his luck could be that bad, but when he invested the third 100,000-year batch, his expression gradually darkened. Every single attempt failed again. Guan's face turned black. He immediately invested a 4th 100,000 years. Failure messages continued appearing, stabbing at his nerves. Fortunately, this time success finally came. The moment he saw the successful breakthrough, every trace of gloom vanished from his heart, and a brilliant smile appeared on his face. After cultivating ki for 74,000 years, you use the perfected innate earth immortal art to force a breakthrough into the Nirvana realm. The tribulation begins. You survive the innate 5 elements divine lightning tribulation. Breakthrough successful. Your cultivation rises to the first level of the Nirvana realm. After cultivating ki for 77,000 years, your cultivation rises to the 2nd level of the Nirvana realm. Oh. After cultivating Qi for 80,000 years, your cultivation rises to the third level of the Nirvana realm. After cultivating Qi for 83,000 years, your cultivation rises to the fourth level of the Nirvana realm. Oh. After cultivating Qi for 98,000 years, your cultivation rises to the eighth level of the Nirvana realm. Oh. The eighth level of the Nirvana realm. Advancing from the seventh level to the eighth had cost him 5,000 years of lifespan. Guan invested another 4,000 years and successfully reached the ninth level. There was no helping it. By now, he had grown accustomed to every minor realm containing 9 levels. Once he reached the ninth level of the Nirvana realm, he would finally be able to relax and resume accumulating lifespan. Boom! The spiritual energy within the earth suddenly surged upward and poured into Guan's body with such force that his robes exploded apart. His brows tightened as he endured the violent spiritual energy tempering his flesh. Unlike his previous breakthroughs, this one actually hurt. Nirvana represented a transformation of both body and soul. Some pain was only natural. At the same time, a vast amount of knowledge concerning the Nirvana realm poured into his mind. As Guan began madly devouring the spiritual energy of heaven and earth, the spiritual energy throughout Tianhuang Mountain started to sink. The phenomenon was so violent that every demon in the region was immediately alarmed. Gales screamed across Tianhuang Mountain. Roars and shrieks echoed through heaven and earth, deafening and terrifying. Meanwhile, late at night in the Beihai Mountain range, more than a dozen disciples of the Tai Xuan sect sat around a campfire in the forest. Zhen Qin turned toward Taoist Xuan Miao, who was meditating beneath a nearby tree. After hesitating, she rose and walked over. "Senior, do we truly not need to set up a formation?" Zhen Qin asked cautiously. She and the others were all disciples of the Law Enforcement Hall. While carrying out a mission along the border of the Tai Kong dynasty, they had been ambushed by Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivators. All of them were captured inside a magical artifact and transported directly into the Beihai mountain range. Fortunately, Taoist Xianmiao had rescued them. Otherwise, the consequences would have been unimaginable. Taoist Xianmiao kept his eyes closed. "It doesn't matter. If Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivators come, I'll simply kill them." After the incident with the Yellow Springs Fox Demon, his hatred for the Epiphyllum Cult had become intense. He believed the Fox Demon must have come from the Epiphyllum Cult. Otherwise, how could it have used Epiphyllum poison and then shown him a vision warning that the cult was about to attack? Clearly, it had been plotting against him. Zhen Qin opened her mouth, then stopped herself. Wasn't he basically using them as bait? The thought bothered her, but she swallowed the complaint. With their foundation establishment cultivation, they could barely survive in the Beihai mountain range without Taoist Xuanmiao's protection. He was not even a member of the Tai Xuan sect, and had no obligation to protect them in the first place. She could not afford to offend him now. Zhen Qin turned around, returned to her original place and resumed meditating. The other law enforcement hall disciples began whispering among themselves about the Epiphyllum Cult. The world had fallen into chaos. The disaster caused by the Epiphyllum Cult this time was far worse than anything before. The disciples felt enormous pressure, and many feared they would die in the coming calamity. "There's no need to worry. A mountain god protects this region. Once my injuries recover, I'll take you back to the Tai Kong dynasty." Taoist Xianmiao's voice drifted over, making everyone turn toward him. A male disciple asked curiously, "Mountain god? What mountain god?" Taoist Xianmiao replied, "Naturally, an immortal deity of the mountains. As for where he is, I will not tell you." The disciples exchanged looks. Taoist Xianmiao sounded so strange that several of them wondered whether his head had been injured. Even Zhen Qin began to suspect something might be wrong with him. For a while, the forest fell silent. Back on Tianhuang Mountain, the forests rolled like ocean waves. The earth trembled faintly, spiritual energy sank, and demonic qi rose into the sky. From a distance, the entire mountain range seemed filled with coiling dragon shadows, magnificent beyond compare. Guan sat naked beneath a tree in meditation. After an hour of stabilization, he had finally crossed into the Nirvana realm. Upon entering Nirvana, his spiritual power transformed into true Dharma power, while his primordial spirit underwent an even deeper metamorphosis. The profound heart within Guan was now covered in runes, and was on the verge of giving birth to a unique divine ability of his own. He already had an idea. He wanted to create a divine ability from the foundation of his own cultivation art. His absorption of the spiritual energy of heaven and earth had not slowed at all. The process continued relentlessly. Reaching the 9th level of the Nirvana realm would still take some time. Guan opened his eyes and frowned slightly. A demon was flying toward the forest where he sat. It was still 100 li away, but if it did not change direction, there was a good chance it would enter his lifespan barrier. "May heaven protect you. If you enter this place, even though we have no grudge against each other, you'll still have to die." Guan thought silently, then closed his eyes again. He did not like killing the innocent. That included demons, provided they had awakened intelligence. Slaughtering living beings without reason always made him feel as though he would accumulate karmic sin. But if any living creature threatened him, he would show no mercy. Time continued to pass. Another hour went by. Guan's cultivation had reached the 6th level of the Nirvana realm. The great winds between heaven and earth began weakening. Not because he was absorbing spiritual energy more slowly, but because Tianhuang Mountain itself was almost drained dry. The lifespan barrier had begun drawing spiritual energy from even more distant regions. Several li away, a red figure staggered along the mountainside. As the demonic mist thinned, moonlight appeared. Beneath it walked a young woman in red, barefoot and disheveled, swaying with every step as though she might collapse at any moment. Her long hair was tangled, several strands glued to her face by blood. Only her large, bright eyes remained clearly visible. Her gaze drooped with exhaustion, making her look painfully weak. "I can't fall yet. I'll rest once I reach the forest ahead," the red-robed girl muttered to herself, her vision already becoming blurred. She continued stumbling forward. A distance of only several li took her nearly half an hour to cross. The moment she entered the forest, she collapsed into a patch of grass and could no longer rise. She was less than 100 zhang from Guan's lifespan barrier. Guan raised his eyes toward the red-robed girl and sensed dense demonic qi around her. Demons capable of taking complete human form were usually great demons, yet her aura was only equivalent to the 9th level of the Foundation Establishment Realm. That was extremely strange. Guan sent out a thread of divine sense and used lifespan detection. Tian Yaoer 9th level Foundation Establishment Realm, 17,999 18,000. Her maximum lifespan was even higher than the Yellow Springs Demon Emperor's. Guan was forced to reconsider what he understood about demonic aptitude. Excluding spirit trees, the greatest maximum lifespan he had ever seen belonged to the Epiphyllum Ghost Mother at 54,000 years. But she was a ghost, so the comparison was not particularly useful. Guan could not help sighing inwardly. Humanity truly had it difficult. Human destiny seemed to prevent ordinary members of the race from naturally living beyond 10,000 years. Of course, humans possessed greater comprehension than demons and ghosts. At the very least, Guan had never seen a demon or ghost cultivate faster than Li Xuandao. Guan continued thinking while waiting for the breakthrough process to finish. Now that his spiritual power had transformed into Dharma power, the difference in strength was heaven and earth. Guan felt that his current self could crush the version of himself from before the breakthrough with ease. Perhaps this was the true immortal Tao. The immortal Tao contained 9 great gates. He had now stepped through the first and begun leaving ordinary mortal life behind. Unfortunately, Guan was different from other cultivators. Breaking through realms did not increase his lifespan. Perhaps it was because he had effectively cheated and never endured the true heavenly tribulations himself. His lifespan could only grow through seizure, not through cultivation breakthroughs. But that hardly mattered. His speed of acquiring lifespan was already absurdly fast. When the lifespan barrier finally stopped drawing spiritual energy from Tianhuang Mountain, the entire range fell into an oppressive silence. Guan could sense most of the demons fleeing Tianhuang Mountain. To them, a phenomenon like this could only mean disaster. Time passed quickly. When Guan finally reached the 9th level of the Nirvana realm, he was still immersed in an indescribably profound state. He slowly opened his eyes and checked how much lifespan the barrier had consumed. The breakthrough itself had digested nearly another 50,000 years. In other words, he had spent a total of 454,000 years of lifespan to reach the 9th level of the Nirvana realm. He still had 1,920,000 years remaining, not counting the smaller remainder. That was acceptable. Guan stood and took out a set of black robes. As he dressed, his gaze drifted toward Tian Yaoer in the distance. Something had changed after his breakthrough. He could now see things ordinary living beings could not. Gray strands of qi clung to Tian Yaoer's body, and when his divine sense touched them, images of her past appeared before him. Could this be the legendary power of karma? Guan began peering into Tian Yaoer's past, and therefore did not immediately dismiss the lifespan barrier. Now that the breakthrough was over, the barrier consumed lifespan extremely slowly. Leaving it active for a little longer would cost almost nothing. Once finished dressing, he finally dismissed the barrier and walked toward Tian Yaoer. His ability to perceive karma was not particularly strong. He could only see events from the last 10 years of her past, and he could not deduce anything about the future. Still, being able to see 10 years of someone's karmic past was already extraordinary. In only a few moments, Tian Yaoer's previous 10 years became clear before his eyes. Guan walked over, lifted the unconscious girl into his arms, and carried her toward the edge of the forest. Moonlight fell across them, stretching their shadows over the ground. Tian Yaoer fell into a nightmare. She dreamed of being surrounded by demons that wanted to tear her apart, boil her into soup, and offer her to the demon matriarch. She suddenly awoke with a gasp and shot upright. Looking around in panic, she discovered that she was inside a mountain cave. Firelight immediately caught her attention. A lone figure sat beside the flames. Frightened, she shrank backward until her body pressed against the stone wall. "You?" Tian Yaoer whispered, too terrified to know what else to say. She looked more carefully. The figure wore black robes and a mask, making him seem profoundly mysterious. It was Guan. At that moment, Guan was still intoxicated by the power of the Nirvana realm. His divine sense covered an enormous stretch of land. From Tianhuang Mountain, he could even observe the entirety of the Nine Dynasties. The sensation was almost addictive. So this was an immortal Dao realm? Guan felt like a true immortal walking the mortal world, as though there were nothing he could not accomplish. Tian Yaoer's gaze shifted to a pill bottle on the ground. She hesitated, then cautiously took 2 steps forward and picked it up. The moment she removed the stopper, the medicinal fragrance made her eyes brighten. She immediately poured the pills into her mouth. Once the medicine entered her stomach, she felt much of her strength return, along with an indescribable sense of relief. Her entire mind felt refreshed. She noticed that her wounds had already scabbed over. Embarrassed, she shrank back against the wall, curled up, and used the hem of her robe to cover her mud-stained bare legs. After calming down, she quickly realized that the mysterious black-robed man must have saved her. She studied Guan with curiosity, finding his aura completely unfamiliar. Ever since hatching from her shell, she had never interacted with a human cultivator. She had been raised by the demon matriarch since childhood, and even the red clothes she wore had been given to her by that woman. A long time later, Guan withdrew his divine sense and slowly opened his eyes. He turned his head. The eyes visible beneath his mask met Tian Yaoer's gaze, making her freeze before quickly coming back to herself. "Thank you for saving me, senior." Tian Yaoer spoke timidly, like a frightened kitten. Guan asked, "What do you plan to do now?" From what he had seen in her past, Tian Yaoer had been raised in captivity by an Integration Realm demon king. The same enclosure held several other young demons, all of whom had been capable of assuming human form at an unusually young age. Their talent was clearly exceptional. When the spiritual energy of Tianhuang Mountain suddenly weakened, the demons believed a catastrophe was coming and began relocating. During the journey, they encountered another great demon and a battle broke out. Tian Yaoer seized the chaos to escape. Afterward, she fled continuously until she collapsed near Guan. Perhaps because both of them had grown up without parents, Guan felt a trace of sympathy for her and did not immediately leave. Tian Yaoer hesitated, unsure how to answer. She herself had no idea where to go. "I'll give you 2 choices, Guan said. "First, I can take you away from Tianhuang Mountain and leave you somewhere distant where you can survive on your own. Second, from now on you can acknowledge me as your master and work for me. In exchange, I will protect your life." Tian Yaoer's eyes became guarded when she heard his words. Gritting her teeth, she asked, "Can you avenge me? The demon matriarch killed my parents. If you kill her for me, I'll follow you. The Tianhuang demon matriarch is too powerful. I'm not her match, but I can teach you how to cultivate. One day you can take revenge with your own hands," Guan replied. The Tianhuang demon matriarch was only in the Integration Realm and naturally posed no threat to Guan. He simply did not want to reveal his strength. From Tian Yaoer's past, he had learned that the demon matriarch had lived for several thousand years. Killing her would probably grant only a 2-digit amount of lifespan. That was nowhere near enough reason to expose himself. Guan wanted Tian Yaoer to manage his future cave abode, but that did not mean he intended to show her his true cultivation. A person always needed to keep something in reserve. He had only just entered the first realm of the immortal Dao. He was still far from invincible. What if, someday, an enemy capable of crossing time itself came back to kill him? Guan wanted everyone to remain uncertain about exactly when he had become powerful. Disappointment appeared in Tian Yaoer's eyes, but after thinking about it, she found his answer reasonable. She had never even heard of anyone stronger than the Tianhuang demon matriarch. She asked carefully, "If I cultivate under you, will I have a chance to avenge them? At the very least, you'll have more hope than you do now, won't you?" "All right, then I'll follow you." Guan swept his sleeve. The empty ground behind him suddenly collapsed, and water immediately began surging from below, quickly forming a small pool. "Go wash yourself," Guan said as he stood and walked toward the cave entrance. Tian Yaoer hurried to her feet. "Where are you going?" "Outside. I'll come back after you've finished bathing." Guan did not stop. He merely waved a hand over his shoulder. Tian Yaoer watched him leave, wanting to say something but remaining silent. For some reason, that small gesture made her feel much more favorable toward him. Perhaps life with this man really would be better than before. Tian Yaoer walked to the pool and stared at the water, secretly wondering. He feels incredibly powerful. Is he really not a match for the demon matriarch? Elsewhere, Guan stepped out of the cave and into the sunlight. He stood halfway up the mountain. Flowers, grass, and trees surrounded him, but nothing could obstruct his vision anymore. Mountain ranges and rivers stretched into the distance beneath layers of drifting mist. The scenery resembled an immortal paradise, making it difficult to associate such beauty with lands ruled by demons. Guan spread out his divine sense and began searching for a suitable location to build a cave abode. He planned to construct an underground dwelling today. Once Xianxia was safely settled, he would return home. Fortunately, he had prepared a large quantity of formation materials long ago. At the very least, he could establish a hidden cave abode now and improve it gradually later. Before long, Guan located a spiritual vein and decided to build beside it. He left behind a yin-yang clone while his true body vanished into the void. An incense stick later, Xianxia crouched beside the fire with her arms wrapped around her legs. The flames illuminated her pretty face as she stared blankly into them, lost in thought. Only when footsteps came from the cave entrance did she snap out of her daze and hurriedly stand. Guan soon entered the cave chamber. Seeing Xianxia clean and washed, he nodded inwardly in satisfaction. She looked presentable enough. If she managed his cave abode in the future, at least she would not be unpleasant to look at. Guan swept his sleeve and a gentle breeze blew over Xianxia. Her long hair lifted and her clothes fluttered, briefly exposing more than he intended to see. Guan immediately turned his gaze away. Xianxia felt her hair loosen and her clothes dry in an instant. The dampness vanished completely from her body. Guan flicked his hand and drew her through the air to his side. He placed a hand on her shoulder, and the two vanished from the cave. Xianxia felt heaven and earth spin violently. The sensation was so unpleasant that she could not open her eyes or extend her divine sense. Instinctively, she grabbed Guan's belt and held on tightly. A moment later, her feet touched solid ground and the discomfort disappeared. She opened her eyes, and they widened in amazement. They had entered an enormous underground space not too different from Xianxian cave abode. All kinds of spirit stones were embedded throughout the rock walls, glittering with soft light. The dense spiritual energy immediately calmed Xianxia's mind. Guan had carved out the entire cave abode himself, yet it looked as though heaven and earth had formed it naturally. The landscape possessed the effortless beauty of divine craftsmanship. From today onward, you'll live here. Focus on recovering and don't go outside. This place is still inside Tianhuang Mountain. If you get bored, you can read. Guan took several books from his sleeve, including Investiture of the Gods and Tai Xuan Immortal Venerable, and placed them on the ground. After saying that, he vanished into the void. Xianxia sat down, picked up Investiture of the Gods, and flipped it open with a puzzled expression. She could not read. Guan stepped out of the teleportation formation at the center of the platform and headed toward a nearby medicinal garden. He had only just broken through, but he had not forgotten the maturation schedule of a single garden. Before he had gone far, Lu Lingjun hurried over. "Valley Master, let me harvest with you." Guan nodded without objection. After walking several li, Guan bent down and began harvesting while Lu Lingjun took out her bamboo basket to collect the herbs. "Valley Master, the world is in chaos now. With cultivation like mine, shouldn't I go out and earn merit?" Lu Lingjun suddenly asked. So that was why she had suddenly become so attentive. Guan casually replied, "Then go ask the sect master and see what he wants you to do. If he wanted to mobilize me, he would have sent an order already. Then stay in the Medicine Valley, who knows? One day Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivators might sneak in here. If that happens, the valley will still need you to protect it." "But, Lingjun, you're a grand cultivator. Why is your Dao heart so restless? Contribution is contribution. Is protecting medicinal herbs not a merit? Is that merit somehow worth less than killing enemies outside?" Guan spoke seriously without slowing his hands. He had just lost more than 400,000 years of lifespan. He absolutely needed to earn some of it back. Lu Lingjun could only relent. The reason she wanted to go out and kill demons was partly because she was thinking about her future plans as sect master. But she could not tell Guan that yet. After all, Guan had a much closer relationship with Lu Baitian. Seeing that this approach had failed, Lu Lingjun changed the subject. "Valley Master, do you think immortals still exist in this world? Heaven and earth are so vast. If immortals exist, why can't ordinary living beings see them? Of course they exist. Otherwise, why would people like us cultivate toward immortality? We're simply still walking the path toward them," Guan replied. "Of course immortals existed. I am one now, I just can't tell you." Guan secretly felt rather pleased, but the question also stirred another thought. Could immortals still be hiding within the mortal world, only beyond the range his previous divine sense could perceive? Or perhaps immortals and gods lived beyond the ocean, separated from mortals entirely. Even after becoming immortals, maybe they still had to struggle toward higher realms. Nirvana was only the first step of the immortal Tao. He still needed to cross 8 more great tribulations before reaching its summit. And what existed above the immortal Tao? For a moment, Guan's thoughts wandered endlessly. Fortunately, that did not interfere with his hands as he continued harvesting herbs. There were no immortals in the world I came from, Lu Lingjun said thoughtfully. Once cultivators reached a sufficiently high realm, the only path left was to shatter the void. We believed immortals and gods must be hiding in worlds ordinary beings could never reach. After ascending, she had discovered that life here did not feel fundamentally different from life before. She was still struggling through the mortal world. It was simply a much larger mortal world, while the immortal Tao remained distant beyond imagination. Guan listened, occasionally offering a few words in response. Half an hour later, the two returned to the pavilion district and parted ways. Guan headed toward the Xuanqing tree. From a distance, he saw Xiaoshuan crouching on the ground and watching the white spirit mouse sleep beneath the trunk. Although Xiaoshuan raised quite a few spirit beasts, the white spirit mouse was still his favorite. Unfortunately, the little creature rarely paid him any attention. Guan suddenly noticed that Xiaoshuan's back seemed older than he remembered. Xiaoshuan was only 3 years younger than Guan. He was already 70 years old and had yet to reach foundation establishment. How could age not begin showing on him? Guan had once given Sichuan a youth-preserving pill, but that could only maintain a youthful appearance. His temperament and spirit had already begun to age. The realization left Guan momentarily dazed. 100 years from now, Xiaoshuan would probably be gone. Xiaoshuan did not enjoy cultivation, and Guan could not force him. Fortunately, even if he never achieved anything on the path of immortality, Xiaoshuan had lived a happy life. Thanks to Guan, he had little to regret. Guan walked up behind him and laughed. Xiaoshuan, what are you staring at? If you want to hold it, just pick it up. Xiaoshuan looked up helplessly. It has a terrible temper. I tried to hold it before and it scratched me. Oh, why didn't you tell me? Insolent little thing. Guan immediately stepped forward, grabbed the white spirit mouse by the tail and lifted it into the air. The mouse woke with a start. The moment it saw Guan, however, it stopped struggling completely. Guan placed the white spirit mouse into Xiaoshuan's arms, then gave the little creature a warning look that clearly told it not to resist. The mouse could only curl into a miserable little ball. At last able to hold the white spirit mouse, Xiaoshuan smiled with delight and gently stroked its back. At that moment, Guan sensed powerful battle auras erupting far in the distance. A battle between profound heart realm cultivators. One of those auras belonged to Ancestor Xuanquan. Guan gave the distant battlefield only a brief glance and had no intention of interfering. As long as the Great Ascension Realm expert of the Epiphyllum Cult did not act, Guan could not be bothered either. This was a calamity facing all 9 dynasties, not his burden alone. More importantly, he could not allow the Taishuan sect to develop the habit of relying on Sword Venerable Fu Dao for every crisis. Guan chatted with Xiaoshuan for nearly half an hour before finally leaving. Xiaoshuan set down the white spirit mouse. The creature immediately sprang away and returned beneath the Xuanqing tree to continue sleeping. Xiaoshuan turned and watched Guan's departing figure. For some inexplicable reason, he felt as though the distance between them was growing wider and wider. They still lived together, and Guan showed no intention of leaving the Taishuan sect. Yet Xiaoshuan could not explain the faint sense of loss that had suddenly appeared in his heart. Fortunately, the feeling came quickly and disappeared just as fast. Xiaoyang, come here. Let's go check the spirit chickens. They should be laying eggs today. Xiaoshuan called to a nearby servant disciple. The mere thought of fresh spirit chicken eggs brought the smile back to his face. Tianhuang Mountain. Inside the underground space, Guan sat on the ground with a stone monument standing before him. He stroked his chin in deep thought. Tian Yaoer crouched nearby and watched him curiously. She endured her curiosity for a long time before finally asking, "What are you thinking about?" Guan replied, "A name for this cave abode." A thought suddenly occurred to him. He opened his eyes and looked at Tian Yaoer. "If you were naming it, what would you call it?" Tian Yaoer tilted her head and thought for a moment. "Little Tian Yao Nest. How does that sound?" Guan closed his eyes again and could not even be bothered to answer. Tian Yaoer pouted. She raised both hands, curled her fingers like claws, lightly swiped them toward Guan, then stuck out her tongue and made a face as though she wanted to scratch him. An incense stick later, Gu stood. Tian Yaoer immediately jumped up as well and stared at him with wide eyes. Guan raised his right hand, extended 2 fingers, and traced them through the air toward the stone monument. Tian Yaoer lowered her gaze and saw a nearly invisible strand of force strike the stone, carving 4 characters into its surface. Nianshu Cave Abode. Nianshu, remember the beginning. Never forget the heart with which one first began. Guan feared that one day power might make him arrogant and complacent. His conversation with Xiaoshuan earlier had stirred many thoughts about life. The name Nianchu was also meant to remind him of the first people he had known when he stepped onto the immortal Tao. After finishing the inscription, Guan picked up the stone monument and carried it into the distance. Tian Yaoer followed closely behind. Ever since Guan returned, she had never allowed more than 7 steps to separate them. Once the monument was planted firmly in the ground, Guan turned around and began forming hand seals. Then he crouched and slapped his palm against the earth. In truth, he did not need to perform all those motions. He was simply putting on a bit of a show for Tian Yaoer. As his Dharma power flowed into the soil, grass began sprouting across the barren earth. In fewer than 3 breaths, green growth covered the entire floor of Nianchu Cave abode, leaving Tian Yaoer staring in amazement. This was the profound heart divine ability Guan had awakened. He called it the Myriad Life Divine Grove, and creating grass was only the smallest of its abilities. Guan could use Dharma power to condense flowers, grass and trees anywhere within the reach of his divine sense. The plants formed from his power contained his own Dharma power and could even provide him with vision, giving the ability countless applications. Because they could also be created almost instantly, the technique could easily become a killing move. With a single wave of his hand, Guan could create a wall of trees 10,000 zhang high. As for what would happen if he unleashed the divine ability to its absolute limit, even he did not yet know. Just thinking about it filled him with anticipation. The divine ability could also accelerate the growth of plants. Today, Guan wanted to perform an experiment. He wanted to see whether accelerating medicinal herbs would affect the lifespan he could harvest from them. He took out a seed and buried it deep in the soil. Tian Yaoer was still staring at the suddenly green earth. She was beginning to seriously suspect Guan had lied about his strength. At the very least, she had never seen the demon matriarch perform a method like this. Half an hour later, Guan looked at the fresh second-rank spirit herb in his hand and sighed. Forcing growth really did reduce lifespan. He had accelerated the second-rank herb to maturity in only half an hour, but when he harvested it, he gained no lifespan at all. According to lifespan detection, the herb itself was already approaching the end of its natural life. Unfortunately, the ability did not display remaining lifespan in months, so he could not judge the exact amount. It seemed honest farming was still the best path. Guan silently scolded himself for being greedy. His ability to seize lifespan was already outrageously powerful, yet he still wanted it to work even faster. He stood and Tian Yaoer stood at the same time, almost as though she were imitating him. "Don't you have anything to do?" Guan finally asked. Tian Yaoer blinked. "Do what? Didn't you say you wanted revenge? Why aren't you cultivating? How am I supposed to cultivate? You haven't taught me any cultivation method yet?" Tian Yaoer answered pitifully. Guan had to admit she looked rather adorable when she felt wronged. He silently cursed her for being a little enchantress, then asked, "How did your cultivation rise this high in the first place?" He had seen 10 years of Tian Yaoer's past. From her earliest days, she had been kept in captivity by the Tianhuangjian Demon matriarch and occasionally fed various pills and medicinal concoctions. Guan had assumed she had learned some cultivation method while still young. "I don't know, it just went up on its own," Tian Yaoer replied. Thinking about it again, Guan realized that might actually be a good thing. At least she would not need to waste time rebuilding her cultivation from scratch. He then began teaching her the innate earth immortal art. Tian Yaoer genuinely knew nothing about cultivation, forcing Guan to explain even the most basic concepts. After an entire night, she could finally absorb Qi on her own. Only then did Guan breathe a sigh of relief. During the process, he also discovered that Tian Yaoer truly could not read. His gaze drifted toward the books scattered in the distance, and he briefly wondered whether he should leave her a copy of the Taishuan's Secret Chronicle. After all, there was something in it he could use. He immediately dismissed the thought. Far too shameless. He could not let an ignorant young demon girl read that kind of book. What if Tian Yaoer developed strange ideas later and started interfering with his cultivation whenever he came here? It was all Shenzhen's fault. That woman had made Guan's thoughts less and less innocent. Some books became forbidden literature for good reason. A cold autumn wind swept through the mountains as Zhen Qin and the others continued following Taoist Xuanmiao. He walked at the very front, leaving a trail of blood behind him. Everyone following could see his condition worsening, but they knew empty words of comfort would accomplish nothing. All they could do was avoid burdening him further. Boom! A heaven-shaking explosion sounded in the distance. A violent gale followed, knocking down trees. Everyone hurriedly circulated spiritual power to resist the shockwave. Taoist Xuanmiao swung his sword and blocked most of the pressure with his soul formation cultivation. He could not stop himself from coughing up blood, causing the Taishuan sect's law enforcement hall disciples behind him to break into cold sweat with worry. Several moments later, the shockwave finally passed. Taoist Xuanmiao dropped to one knee and drove his sword into the ground to keep himself upright. Nearly all the trees around them had been flattened. Broken branches and shredded grass filled the air, leaving the forest in complete chaos. Zhenqin and the others rushed forward and surrounded him, deeply concerned for his condition. Ever since Taoist Xuanmiao rescued them, they had experienced several vicious battles almost every day. His wounds had never been given time to recover, and had only grown worse. Taoist Xuanmiao raised his head. His pale face was filled with unwillingness as he gritted his teeth. The enemy is coming. Everyone, sit down and meditate. The disciples immediately obeyed. After traveling with him for several days, they trusted Taoist Xuanmiao completely. Without him, they would already have died many times over. Taoist Xuanmiao took a deep breath and said softly, "Call upon the mountain god in your hearts. Beg him to save us!" He had no other choice. His spiritual power was too depleted to use the mystic gate of divine summoning again. The mountain god was the only hope he could think of. Although they were far from the place where the mountain god lived, Taoist Xuanmiao believed a divine being would still be able to sense their prayers. The disciples stared at him in disbelief. Some became even more anxious. "We're not running? Why are we praying to some mountain god now?" "Exactly. The whole world is in chaos and battles are everywhere. We might still be able to escape while everything is confused. We'll take turns carrying you. We can definitely get away. We can't just sit here waiting to die." What mountain god? If gods really existed, why would they allow the Epiphyllum Cult to run rampant like this? The disciples grew more agitated as they spoke. They too could sense a powerful aura rapidly approaching. Taoist Xuanmiao said, "We cannot escape. The enemy has already locked onto us. Sit down and do as I say. There is still a chance to survive. If we delay and they capture us, death will be a mercy compared with what follows." The disciples could only grit their teeth and sit. Zhenqin settled among them, closed her eyes, and began calling upon the mountain god in her heart. She did not want to die here either. Before long, everyone sat in meditation, repeatedly calling the mountain god's name within their hearts. At that same moment, Guan was inside an inner sect city selecting high-grade medicinal seeds at the alchemy hall. Suddenly, he felt something strange, and his expression shifted. Somewhere deep beyond ordinary perception, it felt as though someone was calling him. The sensation was completely unfamiliar. He had never experienced anything like it before. Guan spread his divine sense across the Nine Dynasties and quickly located Taoist Xuanmiao. He was the one calling. Although several people sat beside Taoist Xuanmiao, Guan could clearly sense that only Taoist Xuanmiao's call actually reached him. He could not hear the man's thoughts, but he could feel the intense desire to see him. Was this because of his identity as a mountain god? Guan wondered. He suspected it was connected to the Nirvana realm. He had known Taoist Xuanmiao for some time, yet before breaking through, he had never felt anything like this. Then Guan noticed Zhenqin among the group, and saw a band of Epiphyllum Cult cultivators closing in on them. After a moment's hesitation, he put down the seeds in his hand, turned and walked toward the door. In a devastated region of the Beihai mountain range, Taoist Xuanmiao, Zhenqin, and the others sat with their eyes tightly closed, almost as if they had already accepted death. A group of black-robed cultivators flew toward them from the horizon. Their leader was an old man carrying a wooden staff. He had white hair, a face covered in freckles, and a huge python coiled around his shoulders. Everything about him seemed sinister and unnatural. Looking down at Taoist Xuanmiao, the old man said, "Taoist Xuanmiao, have you finally decided to surrender?" He did not attack immediately. According to the intelligence he had received, Taoist Xuanmiao possessed a divine ability capable of summoning grand cultivators. Several powerful members of the Epiphyllum Cult had already died because of it. Taoist Xuanmiao ignored him and continued silently calling in his heart. The wooden staff elder glanced at the others, hesitation flashing through his eyes. The law enforcement hall disciples were unbearably tense. Cold sweat covered most of their foreheads. None dared open their eyes. They could only call desperately for the mountain god in their hearts, or pray for some impossible miracle. After a while, the elder snorted coldly. He raised the wooden staff and lightly swept it through the air. Demonic chi poured out beneath it and quickly covered the sky for 10 li around them. The Tai Xuan sect disciples sensed the change and hurriedly opened their eyes. It felt as though night had descended in an instant. The Epiphyllum Cult cultivators hovered above like murderous ghosts staring down at prey. Despair and fear appeared on every face, Zhenqin's included. Taoist Xuanmiao opened his eyes as well. He sighed softly and looked toward the sky, his expression becoming strangely calm. "Disappointed?" A voice sounded directly beside his ear. Taoist Xuanmiao instinctively turned his head, and his eyes widened with sudden joy. "Mountain God!" The others heard those words and hurriedly looked over. Their eyes widened when they saw what stood on Taoist Xuanmiao's left shoulder. A tiny man in white robes and a theatrical mask stood there, his head not even reaching the height of Taoist Xianxia's ear. Several disciples thought their vision had failed them and actually rubbed their eyes. The wooden staff elder hovering above frowned when he saw the miniature white-robed figure. The other Epiphyllum Cult cultivators began whispering among themselves. None had ever seen a person so small. When they tried examining him with divine sense, they could not make out his true form, nor could they sense even the slightest trace of evil chi from him. Guan leapt from Taoist Xianxiao's shoulder and landed on the trunk of a nearby tree that had been knocked sideways. Taoist Xianxiao immediately knelt and bowed. "Please save us, Mountain God. The Epiphyllum Cult has committed countless atrocities. They even intend to sacrifice the people of the Nine Dynasties. Heaven and earth cannot tolerate their crimes. Please save the living beings of this world." The law enforcement hall disciples finally recovered and hurriedly turned to kneel before Guan as well. Xianxia bowed with them. For some reason, the tiny white-robed figure gave her an inexplicable sense of familiarity. "Mountain God? Pretending to be a ghost and playing at divinity. I advise you not to interfere in matters that do not concern you." The wooden staff elder stared at Guan and threatened him coldly. Guan ignored the Integration Realm Grand Cultivator's threat completely. He turned toward Taoist Xuanmiao and said slowly, "A mountain god does not save all living beings. He protects only the land entrusted to him. None of you belong to this place, yet you ask me to save you. Such a thing violates the laws of immortals." Taoist Xuanmiao hurriedly answered, "If you save us, we will willingly worship and make offerings to you afterward." Sincerity brings a response. Guan turned toward the wooden staff elder. Too lazy to waste more words, he raised his right hand with his palm facing the sky. The moment his hand rose, the earth began trembling violently, shocking everyone present. Boom, boom, boom! Gigantic roots tore out of the ground like enormous pythons racing toward the heavens. The wooden staff elder dodged in alarm, but the other Epiphyllum Cult cultivators were not so fortunate. Roots pierced through them one after another, crushing flesh and bone as blood sprayed across the sky. The demonic chi overhead vanished in an instant and sunlight poured down. Xianxia and the others stared at the magnificent scene before them with open mouths. Even Taoist Xuanmiao was shaken. Enormous trees rose straight into the heavens, packed so tightly together that no end could be seen in either direction. It was as though a colossal green mountain had suddenly erupted from the earth and pierced the sky, overwhelming the vision of every witness. The wooden staff elder darted frantically between the growing trees, swinging his staff and unleashing tremendous spells. Demonic ki erupted with earth-shaking force. Yet before 3 breaths had passed, countless vines wrapped around him. Horror filled his face as he discovered that his spiritual power had been suppressed inside his body and could no longer leave it. How is this possible? Could he truly be a mountain god? The wooden staff elder's eyes bulged with despair. A moment later, vines covered his face, and his body disappeared into the interwoven branches, becoming one with the forest itself. Seen from above, the land for 100 li in every direction was packed with colossal trees. Their trunks and branches twisted around one another, forming an enormous mountain of living wood that stunned every creature capable of witnessing it. Taoist Xuanmiao stared upward at the tree mountain. Even with his eyesight, he could not judge how high those trees truly reached. Lines of notifications began appearing before Guan. Not a bad harvest. Yet all those cultivators combined had given him less than 5,000 years of lifespan. Guan lowered his hand. The terrifying, magnificent mountain of trees immediately began to collapse into countless green motes of light. Within moments, every trace of it vanished. Only the enormous, abyss-like crater left behind proved that the unbelievable scene had truly happened. The law enforcement hall disciples looked at Guan again, their eyes filled with reverence and disbelief. Such a tiny body had unleashed power comparable to gods and ghosts. He truly was a mountain god, and far stronger than the mountain gods of legend. Guan looked at Taoist Xuanmiao, rubbed his chin, and said thoughtfully, "I warned you before. Since you exposed my existence, I have no choice but to punish you a little." Taoist Xuanmiao immediately took a square wooden box from his storage pouch. "This junior willingly accepts punishment. Please accept this treasure as repayment for saving our lives, mountain god." Guan flicked his hand, drawing the wooden box over before tossing it into his storage pouch. He owned many such pouches. Afraid Xianxia might recognize the one he normally used, he had deliberately switched to a different storage pouch today. He leapt through the air and stopped before Taoist Xuanmiao, lightly tapping the man's forehead. "Then your punishment will be losing your cultivation realm for 1 year." Taoist Xuanmiao's expression changed instantly. His cultivation began falling at terrifying speed, dropping level after level until it stopped at the Foundation Establishment realm. This was Guan's return to Ocean Divine Tao. It was a divine ability awakened from the innate reincarnation art and could seal another person's cultivation. Zhen Qin and several others also sensed Taoist Xuanmiao's aura collapsing and could not hide their shock. When Guan turned toward them, they hurriedly took out treasures of their own and offered them up, swearing repeatedly that they would never reveal the mountain god's existence to anyone. Guan swept his sleeve and collected everything. Then he waved again. A gentle wind suddenly rose, carrying all of them into the sky, Taoist Xuanmiao included. Immortals and mortals are separated by different laws. If any of you break your promise, then even if you flee to the ends of the earth, I will still find you. Guan's voice entered the ears of every law enforcement hall disciple. He controlled his Dharma power and transformed it into a gentle wind, safely carrying Taoist Xuanmiao, Zhen Qin, and the others all the way to the border of the Taitong dynasty. Only then did he withdraw his attention and vanish from the mountains. The main reason he had acted this time was Zhen Qin. Even so, using his new power felt wonderful. For the first time, Guan truly understood just how formidable the immortal Tao had become. No wonder the Nirvana realm was considered so special. Without undergoing Nirvana, a human cultivator's natural lifespan could not surpass 10,000 years. The difference between the Nirvana realm and the Great Ascension Realm was not merely a matter of stronger spiritual power. It was a transformation in every aspect of existence. After returning to the Tai Xuan sect, Guan continued purchasing medicinal seeds in preparation for planting at Nianshu Cave Abode. Before doing any large-scale planting, he carefully taught Tian Yaoer how to handle the work. Guan now possessed methods that were almost truly immortal. He could have transmitted enormous amounts of knowledge directly into Tian Yaoer's mind with a single tap of his finger. But to conceal his strength, he still chose to teach her slowly and personally. He had plenty of time anyway. Elsewhere, beside a broad river, the law enforcement hall disciples looked at Taoist Xuanmiao with complicated expressions, wanting to speak but not knowing what to say. They were no longer celebrating their survival. Instead, they were worried that Taoist Xuanmiao had suffered too much because of them. If he had not tried to save them, how could he have ended up like this? After washing the blood from his face, Taoist Xuanmiao stood and smiled. "You don't need to worry. My cultivation has merely been sealed by the mountain god for 1 year. I did break my promise. This punishment is something I deserved." The disciples immediately began taking the blame upon themselves, but Taoist Xuanmiao merely smiled faintly. Having his cultivation suppressed to foundation establishment did not make him miserable. If anything, he was even more excited than before. He now completely believed that the mountain god was a true immortal. The methods he had witnessed were unbelievable, and at the same time, they filled him with hope. The road of immortal cultivation truly could reach immortality. Alright everyone, we've returned to the Taikong dynasty, so this is where we part ways. Remember, do not let anyone learn of the mountain god's existence, Taoist Xuanmiao said, cupping his hands. The disciples hurriedly returned the gesture and swore again that they would keep the secret. Even someone as powerful as Taoist Xuanmiao had had his cultivation sealed. How could they possibly dare anger the mountain god? In truth, they felt the same excitement as Taoist Xuanmiao. They had seen a kind of hope they had never known before. The immortal path was vast and uncertain, and the world was boundless. Whether true immortals existed had always been endlessly debated throughout the cultivation world, but those who had personally witnessed one would naturally possess far greater conviction than everyone else. Autumn passed into winter, and heavy snow gradually covered Xuan Valley in white. Zhen Qin returned to visit Guan and told him just how chaotic the outside world had become. There are simply too many people in the Epiphyllum Cult. Even with all 9 dynasties joining forces to surround and destroy them, we still can't kill them all, Zhen Qin sighed. She was only a foundation establishment cultivator, so naturally there was a limit to what she could personally see. Guan, however, frequently witnessed battles between Profound Heart Realm powerhouses. By now, Profound Heart Realm Grand Cultivators were stationed across the world. The 9 dynasties together had already revealed more than 20 such experts, and the number was still rising. The Epiphyllum Cult was no different. Since neither side could decisively defeat the other's Profound Heart Realm experts, the wars below them had fallen into a long stalemate. This was no short-lived conflict. It was the kind of war that could continue for years. Guan was not worried. He was simply waiting for the Great Ascension Realm cultivator to finally appear. The moment that person stuck his head out, Guan would kill him. Guan's divine sense could now cover all 9 dynasties, but the Epiphyllum Cult's true headquarters lay inside the Road of the 9 Netherworlds. For now, he still could not locate the Great Ascension Realm expert. He had no intention of entering the Road of the 9 Netherworlds to hunt him down. Guan preferred to wait until the enemy emerged openly. That way, news of the man's death would spread everywhere. Once the Epiphyllum Cult lost its leader, the organization would naturally begin collapsing. After Xianxia finished speaking, Guan poured her a cup of tea and smiled. "Why do you seem so excited? Compared with before you left, your entire spirit feels different." Xianxia laughed. "Even though people are dying everywhere outside, this experience gave me much stronger motivation to cultivate. Master, I'm planning to enter seclusion next. Our group has finished its mission, and the Law Enforcement Hall has given us time to rest." Guan took bottle after bottle of pills from his storage bag and handed them to her. "Cultivate properly. In the future, your master will have to depend on you for protection." Xianxia accepted them without hesitation. Smiling, she said, "Once I become an immortal, I'll refine a pill of eternal youth and immortality for master." Her face was glowing with confidence, making Guan want to laugh. Ever since Suhan and Ye Yan left, Xianxia had visited Xuan Valley frequently and continued treating the place like her own home. Guan had never found it bothersome. Every time she came to see him, he was genuinely happy. After Xianxia left, Guan wandered through Xuan Valley, admiring the results of years of cultivation and planting. Time continued to pass. Although the cultivation world had fallen into chaos, the Taishuan sect itself had not yet been attacked. Guan's days inside the sect remained as peaceful as ever. The new year arrived at the end of the year. The spring festival was not as lively as in previous years, so Guan celebrated quietly with the servant disciples. Only late at night did he secretly travel to Nianchu Cave abode. He appeared on the grassland and sensed the spiritual energy within the cave. Satisfaction appeared on his face. The spirit-gathering formation he had personally arranged was already beginning to show results. Tian Yaoer immediately hurried over. "Master, did you bring meat?" The previous month, Guan had roasted meat for her once. From that day onward, she became completely obsessed with grilled food. Every time Guan visited, the first thing she asked was whether he had brought meat. Nianchu Cave abode had no visible entrance, so Tian Yaoer could not leave even if she wanted to. All she could do was cultivate and wait. "I brought some, but first we plant seeds. How many pieces of meat you get depends on how well you work," Guan replied. Tian Yaoer's eyes immediately widened. Guan then took her into the fields and began teaching her how to plant properly. After demonstrating once, he watched Tian Yaoer work on her own. The lesson continued until midnight. Guan discovered that she actually had considerable talent for planting. She might look a little foolish at times, but she was careful and surprisingly skillful with her hands. Once the planting was finished, Guan took out several lamb legs along with his own specially prepared seasonings. Tian Yaoer's eyes lit up, and she eagerly ran off to gather firewood. An incense stick later, Tian Yaoer crouched on the ground, gnawing happily on a sizzling, fatty lamb leg while staring intently at another one still roasting over the flames. "It's all yours, eat slowly," Guan said with a laugh. Why did he feel as though he were raising a cat? In truth, Tian Yaoer was not a cat demon at all, but some kind of bird demon. Considering her extraordinary maximum lifespan, Guan suspected she might possess phoenix blood. With her mouth still full of meat, Tian Yaoer asked indistinctly, "Master, why did you come to Tianhuang Mountain in the first place?" They had already lived together for several months, yet she still knew almost nothing about Guan. Seeing that he was in a good mood today, she finally gathered the courage to ask. "Tianhuang Mountain is enormous and rich in resources. I came here specifically to grow medicinal herbs. The ones planted here now are all varieties I gathered around the mountain." "Master, do you know alchemy?" "Of course." The demon matriarch had a demon under her who knew alchemy, and she treated him very well. "Can you teach me alchemy in the future?" "That depends on how you behave." "Master, where did you come from?" The conversation between one human and one demon echoed through the silent cave abode, while firelight cast their shifting shadows across the stone walls. Tian Yaoer looked at Guan and felt more comfortable than she ever had before. She was still trapped underground, yet whenever Guan was beside her, she felt safe and no longer constantly afraid. Afterward, Tian Yaoer began recording every detail of the planting work, which meant Guan no longer needed to visit Nianchu Cave abode every night. Whenever Guan was absent, Tian Yaoer cultivated diligently. She was afraid he might become disappointed and abandon her. So from the day she began cultivation, she never once allowed herself to be lazy. In the blink of an eye, half a year passed. Guan was now 74 years old, and his lifespan had once again surpassed 2 million years. Everything was developing smoothly. One day, Guan visited the outer sect city to hand over Xuan Valley's ice harvest from the previous year. After leaving the alchemy hall, he heard passing disciples discussing major developments in the cultivation world. According to the rumors, the Epiphyllum Cult had built an enormous altar inside Wanji Forest of the Gutian Dynasty, and was preparing a mass living sacrifice. People were disappearing across multiple dynasties, while sects from the other 8 realms were converging on the Gutian Dynasty. Everyone believed a decisive battle was approaching. Guan examined the altar with divine sense. It truly was enormous, covering hundreds of li. At its center stood a massive cauldron with a great banner planted inside it. Countless resentful souls were trapped within the flag. Around 40 profound heart realm grand cultivators guarded the altar. The Epiphyllum Cult was clearly preparing to gamble everything on one final move. That also meant the Great Ascension Realm cultivator behind them would probably appear soon. Guan withdrew his divine sense and headed toward Wu Jue's residence. Wu Jue had already become an inner sect disciple, but he had never sold his courtyard in the outer sect city. He simply no longer lived there most of the time. Guan could sense Wu Jue's aura inside, meaning the man had come specifically to wait for him. When Guan entered the courtyard, Wu Ju was practicing fist techniques. The moment he saw Guan, he smiled. "You finally came. I was starting to think I wouldn't see you before I left." Wu Jue's maximum lifespan had not increased again, but his cultivation had already reached the first level of the core formation realm. Guan closed the gate, turned back, and asked with a smile, "Were you waiting for me because something happened? My master is taking me to the Guqin dynasty to help destroy the Epiphyllum demonic path. Guqin is extremely far from Taikang, and I don't know how long this journey will keep me away, so I wanted to say goodbye," Wu Ju replied, lowering his fists. He looked calm on the surface, but Guan could see the tension and fear hidden inside him. Wu Ju had never experienced a true life-and-death battle. He also carried a deep fear of the Epiphyllum Cult, because his master had died at their hands. "With your talent, surely you could stay if you wanted to," Guan said. Wu Ju shook his head. "The Epiphyllum Cult is too powerful. The Taishuan sect has no choice but to commit everything to destroying them. And besides, I have my own reason for going." His gaze became firm. He had to avenge his master. He did not know which particular Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivator had killed his master, but in Wu Jiaoshua's eyes, that no longer mattered. If the Epiphyllum Cult itself was destroyed, then his master's death would be avenged. "Then you must be careful. Demonic methods are strange and unpredictable. They use every kind of scheme imaginable. Never judge an enemy's true strength by cultivation realm alone." Guan began warning him in detail. Wu Ju did not find the lecture annoying in the slightest. Instead, a smile slowly appeared on his face. Having a brother like this waiting behind him only made him more determined to go. If the Epiphyllum Cult completed its sacrifice, demonic cultivators would eventually invade the Taishuan sect as well. When that happened, Guan would be in danger. Wu Jiao then described the scale of the Taishuan sect's expedition. The sect master had mobilized 1/3 of all inner sect disciples to Wanji Forest, making it clear just how seriously the sect viewed the coming battle. After saying farewell to Wu Jiao, Guan spent the following days watching countless Taishuan sect disciples fly over the Third Medicine Valley and Xuan Valley. The Taishuan sect had begun its campaign. Standing on his balcony, Guan looked into the distance and saw battles already erupting around Wanji Forest. Sects that arrived earlier had begun attacking the Epiphyllum Cult. Unfortunately, 40 profound heart realm grand cultivators working together were almost invincible. The cultivators of the various dynasties were ultimately defeated and forced to withdraw while they gathered more strength. Guan then looked toward Wukin Wasteland, which had once again fallen under Epiphyllum Cult control. At the entrance to the Road of the Nine Netherworlds, cultists continued pouring out and flying toward the Taichen dynasty. The Nine Dynasties were Taikang, Great Yu, Shentong, Tianwei, Taichen, Hanlu, Great Zhao, Great Zhang, and Wu Zhen. Among them, the Taichen dynasty was relatively weak. It lay near the center of the lands of the Nine Dynasties and possessed considerable territory, but it had already been occupied by the Epiphyllum Cult. From Guan's immense perspective, he could see cultivators from every direction continuously converging on the Taichen dynasty to provide support. The sight was breathtaking. After watching for a while, even Guan felt his blood heat up. Part of him wanted to go join the excitement, but he still had Medicine Valleys to protect. That was the truly important matter. More importantly, if Guan acted too early, the Great Ascension Realm cultivator might never show himself. The enemy had remained hidden all this time. Guan was certain the Epiphyllum Cult was preparing something else. To Guan, the gigantic altar in Wanji Forest looked almost too much like a target. He suspected the cult might actually be planning a surprise attack on the Taishuan sect. The Taishuan sect clearly had the same suspicion. A profound heart realm grand cultivator still remained behind to guard the sect, and it was not ancestor Xuanquan. 1 month later, patrols throughout the Taishuan sect's cities increased dramatically. A tense atmosphere covered the entire sect, affecting even the servant disciples of the Third Medicine Valley and Xuan Valley. As Xuan Valley's eldest disciple, Lu Jujia began arranging rotating patrols on the surrounding mountain peaks to prevent Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivators from approaching. The Third Medicine Valley did the same, with the stewards taking turns leading groups of disciples on patrol. Early one morning in the Third Medicine Valley, Guan had just finished the daily morning exercises and was walking toward his pavilion when he sensed something. His gaze shifted slightly, but his steps did not slow. Boom! A thunderclap suddenly shook heaven and earth, making everyone in the valley tremble and turn toward the sound. Dark thunderclouds had appeared on the horizon in the direction of the inner sect. They rolled toward the Third Medicine Valley like a black tide threatening to swallow the entire sky. What was that sound? Don't tell me the Epiphyllum Cult is attacking us? Wasn't the Epiphyllum Cult supposed to be in the Tai-Chen dynasty? Our Tai-Xuan sect is still one of the leading sects among the Nine Dynasties. If they destroy us, the morale of the Nine Dynasties will definitely collapse. I just hope the fighting doesn't reach our Medicine Valley. The disciples gathered together and began talking anxiously. Guan stopped as well. Standing beside a wooden railing at the edge of one medicinal garden, he looked toward the sky and observed the battle erupting in the sect's main city. The main sect city was the largest city in the entire Tai-Xuan sect. Inner sect disciples were allowed to enter, but they could not reside there. It was home to the sect's highest-ranking elders, clans, and powerful figures. At that moment, two Integration Realm Grand Cultivators were already fighting inside the city. Once their battle began, more and more cultivators joined in until the conflict became a chaotic melee. This was not an external invasion by the Epiphyllum Cult. The cult's hidden spies inside the sect had begun to move. Guan watched for a while and noticed that most of the disciples creating chaos seemed to come from the same cultivation clan. Lu Lingjun walked to his side. Valley Master, from now on, don't leave the Medicine Valley. She also stared toward the main sect city, her expression solemn. She could sense no fewer than 5 Integration Realm auras. Integration Realm cultivators alone were still not enough to frighten her, but she had a powerful intuition that something far more terrifying was about to happen. Guan nodded lightly and continued watching the battle. The Third Medicine Valley quickly fell into darkness, almost as if night had suddenly descended. Rumble, deep thunder rolled across the horizon. It sounded like an ancient ferocious beast roaring within the sea of clouds, deafening everyone below. You should reveal yourself. The battle between you and me will decide the fate of the Tai-Xuan sect. A cold voice echoed throughout the entire sect. Anyone who heard it felt a crushing heaviness in the chest. Lu Lingjun's expression changed. She could tell immediately that the owner of that voice possessed cultivation beyond the Integration Realm. Guan had already seen the speaker walking leisurely across the sea of clouds. The man wore black robes and a purple crown. 18 short golden blades floated behind him. As he advanced, his sleeves billowed in the wind, pulling waves of air behind him like dragons. His aura was tyrannical beyond measure. 5th level of the Profound Heart Realm. This man was probably one of the Epiphyllum Cult's 100 venerables. The Profound Heart Realm Grand Cultivator currently guarding the Tai-Xuan sect was 3 minor levels below him. At the same time, inside the scripture hall of an inner sect city, Elder Shulu stood behind the counter and stared into the distance. A figure was slowly descending the stairs, and Shulu could not help asking, "How confident are you?" Following his gaze, a black-robed old man with the bearing of an immortal descended the staircase. A horsetail whisk rested in his hand, and his expression remained calm. He did not stop walking. As he continued downward, he left behind only one sentence. "I'll do what I can." Shulu turned toward the window. The rolling thunderclouds resembled a black ocean filled with monstrous waves, heavy and terrifying. Worry appeared in his eyes. Today will be this poor Taoist's first battle against another Profound Heart Realm cultivator since entering the Profound Heart Realm myself. "May I ask your title?" This poor Taoist is known as Kusong. The black-robed elder's voice echoed across the Tai-Xuan sect, and the restless cities below suddenly fell silent. Profound Heart Realm? This was the first time Lu Lingjun had ever heard the name of that realm. So above integration was Profound Heart? Her divine sense had already located the figures above the sea of clouds. Admiration and longing filled her eyes. She would reach that realm. No, she would surpass even the Profound Heart Realm. "I am Venerable Qiqian of the Epiphyllum Cult. To die by my hand after attaining the Profound Heart Realm will not disgrace your Tao." The arrogant voice rang out once more, making the Tai-Xuan sect cultivators with worry for ancestor Kusong. Boom! A vast pressure descended over the entire Tai-Xuan sect. The thunderclouds above churned violently, and protective barriers lit up over nearly every city at the same time as formations resisted the pressure of the battle in the sky. Venerable Qiqian and ancestor Kusong had begun fighting. The two battled more than 10,000 zhang above the ground, keeping their attacks away from the cities below. Even so, the pressure released by their clash was so immense that mountains throughout the region trembled. Lu Lingjun stared intently at the sky, unwilling to miss a single detail of the battle between two profound heart realm grand cultivators. Guan glanced at her. She isn't going to enter enlightenment just from watching this, is she? A while later, Lu Lingjun remained completely absorbed in the battle, while Guan turned and walked toward the entrance of the valley. The Epiphyllum Cult had not sent only venerable Qiqian. An even more powerful existence had arrived at the entrance of the Third Medicine Valley. From a distance, Guan saw a woman in white walking toward the valley gate. She wore a wide-brimmed veiled hat and carried herself with great mystery. Her snow-white hands rested elegantly before her waist, and her dignified bearing made her resemble an immortal maiden descending into the mortal world. It was difficult to associate such a woman with the demonic cultivators of the Epiphyllum Cult. Fairy Baihe 9th level, Profound Heart Realm. 2180, 4900, 6500, 9th level of the Profound Heart Realm. The Epiphyllum Cult truly intended to flatten the Taishuan sect in a single strike. Guan sighed inwardly and quickened his steps. He soon reached Fairy Baihe and cupped his hands politely. The Epiphyllum Cult is causing chaos everywhere. May I ask why Senior has come here? A veil hung from Fairy Baihe's broad hat. Beneath it, her lips were only faintly visible. Though Guan could tell they had been painted with thick rouge, this demonic woman was extremely cautious. She had used some secret technique to make her cultivation appear to be only at the first level of the core formation realm. Little brother, the spiritual energy in your Medicine Valley is so abundant. Your identity surely isn't ordinary. Tell me, who are you? Fairy Baihe asked. Her voice was pleasant enough to make one's thoughts wander. Guan reached out, grasped her wrist and said, I'm merely an ordinary outer sect disciple of the Taishuan sect. Fairy Baihe laughed, but there was a cold edge beneath the sound. She made no attempt to pull her hand away. Instead, she used voice transmission. Rumor says Sword Venerable Fu Dao has never appeared more than 1,000 li from this area. Little brother, if you possess information about Sword Venerable Fu Dao, I can spare your life. Guan had already sensed that she intended to use voice transmission, so he simply let her finish. Then his expression became stern. So you really are a demonic cultivator. In that instant, Fairy Baihe felt an incomparably tyrannical force pour into her body. Beneath the veil, her beautiful face changed dramatically. She tried to wrench her wrist from Guan's grasp, only to discover that she could not move at all. Her eyes widened in disbelief. Even more terrifying, she could no longer speak, nor could she send her primordial spirit out of her body. She had never experienced fear like this in her entire life. Her cultivation realm began plummeting at terrifying speed, while her primordial spirit was dragged deep into her soul. In moments, her cultivation fell all the way to the first level of the core formation realm, the exact realm she had been pretending to possess. Impossible. Fairy Baihe nearly broke down. The sheer power of her opponent and the collapse of her cultivation shattered her composure completely. Under her despairing gaze, Guan took out a pearl, the heavenly shadow pearl that Lu Baitian had once given him. His left hand remained locked around Fairy Baihe's wrist while his right pressed the heavenly shadow pearl against her abdomen. Demonic cultivator! Take this! Guan shouted loudly. Boom, the heavenly shadow pearl erupted with dazzling light. Streams of force blasted into Fairy Baihe, instantly turning her body into a bloody corpse. Blood splattered all over Guan. The heavenly shadow pearl itself could not kill a profound heart realm cultivator. Before activating it, Guan had already used his Dharma power to forcibly scatter Fairy Baihe's soul, killing her instantly. His loud shout attracted the attention of many servant disciples nearby. Lu Lingjun suddenly appeared in front of him. Seeing Guan covered in blood, she frowned. Are you all right? Why didn't you call me just now? Guan pretended to be terrified. I thought she was an inner sect disciple. Who knew she was actually an Epiphyllum Cult demonic cultivator? Hurry and destroy the body. We can't leave evidence behind, or the Epiphyllum Cult might come looking for revenge later. Even the hand holding the heavenly shadow pearl was trembling. Killing Fairy Baihe had granted him 490 years of lifespan. Not bad at all. Seeing how frightened Guan looked, Lu Lingjun immediately cast a spell and burned Fairy Baihe's corpse with spiritual fire. A faint trace of Dharma power that Guan had deliberately left within the body was consumed at the same time, causing the corpse to turn rapidly into ash. Lu Lingjun did not detect Guan's Nirvana realm Dharma power at all. The difference between that power and ordinary spiritual energy was simply too vast. However, she could confirm that the dead woman's apparent cultivation had indeed been at the first level of the core formation realm. Watching Fairy Baihe turn to ash, Guan let out a long breath and thought regretfully, what a pity. Why didn't she bring a storage pouch or storage ring? Lu Lingjun snapped irritably. Looks like you haven't been scared completely senseless. Just look at yourself. You're a golden ranking genius, yet a demonic cultivator who had only just entered core formation, frightened you this badly. Then her thoughts drifted back toward the battle she had been watching earlier. Somewhere deep within her mind, it felt as though she had grasped something. The profound heart realm truly was intoxicating. The difference between the ninth level of the integration realm and the profound heart realm was almost impossible to imagine. For the first time, Lu Lingjun felt that only after reaching the profound heart realm could a cultivator truly be called a great power.